Chapter 389. Looking at the mysterious person slowly walking into the guild, Noah remembered the name that Lebby, who was in his arms, had mentioned before she fell asleep. Mishgang? He's Mishgang. In addition to Kildas, there was one of the 3 S-rank sorcerers in Fairy Tale who was known as the strongest backup sorcerer's Mishgang. Unlike Alusha, who often interacted with his companions in the guild, and Laxas, who did not have a good relationship with his companions, this S-rank sorcerer named Mishgang was mysterious. Noah heard that ever since Mishgang joined Fairy Tale, he would use sleep magic every time he went to the guild, making everyone in the guild fall into a deep sleep, except for showing his face once during the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam. Thus, Noah heard that apart from Makarov, no one in Fairy Tale had seen Mishgang before. This enigmatic sorcerer, until now, Noah realized that it was not just for show. Too mysterious. Even with Noah's outstanding senses, he could not sense even a trace of mana from Mishgang. It was obvious that Mishgang was not as simple as he looked. Of course, Noah did not think that there was another possibility that he could not sense mana from Mishgang. Mishgang had no mana at all. However, to be able to become the S-rank magic shooter of the Fairy Tale and use such a powerful sleep spell, how could there not be any magic on her body? Because of this point of view, Noah subconsciously ruled out this possibility, but he did not expect that this was the correct answer. Noah, who did not know this, found it strange that Mishgang deliberately avoided using sleep magic on him. Although Noah felt that this level of sleep magic was not enough to affect him, Mishgang clearly had a purpose for doing so. Mishgang was here for Noah. It was that simple. However, for some reason, Noah felt that Mishgang's aura was a little familiar. While he was suspicious, Noah also cast his gaze on Mishgang and spoke first. "Are you Mishgang? Although I heard rumors, I did not expect that you would actually hypnotize everyone in the guild when you appeared. What's the point of that?" After hearing Noah's words, Mr. Gang stopped in his tracks. After a moment of silence, he uttered these words. "Because my appearance is not suitable for others to know." As he said this, Mishgang suddenly reached out and removed his headscarf and face cloth, revealing his true appearance that no one knew about to Noah. Noah was stunned at first, but when he saw Mishgang's appearance, his pupils shrank. Noah had seen that face a few days ago. Short blue hair. A familiar face. And a sword-shaped tattoo above and below one eye. It was none other than Zeke Klein. No. It wasn't Zeke. "You." Noah said in shock. "You are Jalal?" Noah finally remembered. That's right, Mishgang's aura was exactly the same as Jalal's aura that he had encountered in the forest. The most mysterious S-rank sorcerer in the history of Fairy Tale was the same Jalal that Noah had met in the forest when he was young. The same Jalal who had been running around in order to stop an unknown super subspace magic called anima. "Call me Mishgang." The former friend showed a gentle smile to Noah. "To be honest, if you can call me that, it will be a lot more convenient for me." "You came to Fairy Tale?" Noah looked at Jalal with surprise. "No, it should be Mishgang. Don't you need to stop that anima thing? I am now wandering around the world, stopping the activation of anima everywhere." Mishgang stopped smiling, and his expression more or less carried a hint of helplessness. "However, traveling everywhere also means that I need to have sufficient travel expenses. For the sake of living, I can only find a guild to join and work while traveling. Because you're in a Fairy Tale, I thought of coming here, but after I arrived, I found out that you had already left." Noah had left Fairy Tale for a full 6 years. Mr. Gang had probably joined Fairy Tale in the past 6 years, but Noah was coincidentally not in the guild, so they hadn't bumped into each other. Now that they had finally met, it was only now that they had finally met. "It's not easy for you." Knowing that Mishgang was the Jalal that he had met when he was young, Noah's mood became better, but he quickly thought of something and hurriedly spoke. "What about Wendy? Where did Wendy go?" When they parted ways with Mishgang, Noah left Wendy in Jalal's care. Now, Mishgang had joined Fairy Tale, and he had joined Fairy Tale for quite some time. Then, where was Wendy? Could it be that an accident had happened? Don't worry, nothing happened to Wendy. Sensing that Noah's face was gradually darkening, Mishgang quickly understood what Noah was thinking and hurriedly spoke. I put Wendy in a good place, and she is now living there. Put Wendy in another place? Noah frowned. Why? When I was bringing Wendy to look for Grandine, I encountered Anima. Mishgang sighed. Because it would cause a great disaster if it was allowed to activate, so in order to stop it, I could only put Wendy in a safe place. After all, it would be too dangerous for Wendy to get close to that Anima. Is that so? Noah's brows relaxed little by little. Then where is Wendy now? I put Wendy in a guild, Mishgang answered honestly. That guild is called Cat Shelter. Wendy is in the cat shelter? Noah sighed in relief. Good, it's not a hard place to find. Although it hadn't been long since he returned to this world, Noah had enough information about this time period, including some of the more famous guilds. Cat Shelter was one of them. Knowing that Wendy was in Cat Shelter, Noah was slightly relieved. Then, he stared at Mishgang's face and hesitated for a moment before speaking. Actually, I met a guy called Kieran in the council. That guy looks exactly like you. Mr. Gang's expression froze, and his eyes became uncertain. Seeing this, Noah was sure that Mishgang knew about Kieran's existence. If there's a reason that you can't explain, it's fine if you don't say it, Noah looked at his childhood friend in front of him and said. But, as long as it's within your means, give me some information. I'm a little concerned about that guy. You're right to be concerned about him, Mishgang said in a deep voice. I know about Kieran's existence as well. He's not a simple person. Mishgang hesitated for a moment, then seemed to give up on something and said to Noah. If I'm not wrong, Kieran must be related to Jalal. Jalal? Noah was completely stunned. Jalal? Wasn't that Mishgang? You might be surprised, but I still have to tell you, Mishgang looked at Noah solemnly and said. Actually, there's another person who looks exactly like me and Kieran. His name is Jalal. Hearing this, even Noah felt that he couldn't react. There was another person who looked exactly like him? Could it be that that face was very popular in this world? Chapter 390. Noah looked at Mr. Gang's back as he walked away from Fairy Tale. Only when Mr. Gang's figure disappeared from his sight did he look down at his hand. There was a piece of paper in his hand. There was an address written on it. It was a set of coordinates on the ocean. Paradise Tower. That was the name of the location that Mr. Gang had given Noah. According to Mr. Gang, it was a place where people were treated like slaves. It was like hell. The so-called Jalal that Mr. Gang had mentioned was in the Paradise Tower. For some reason, Mr. Gang seemed to be very concerned about this person called Jalal. He had specifically investigated this matter, and the results of his investigation were the coordinates in Noah's hand and the name of the Paradise Tower. Why would Jalal be in a hell where people were treated like slaves? Why would Mr. Gang use the name, Jalal, to introduce himself when he was young? Why would Mr. Gang care about Jalal so much? Why would Mr. Gang, Jalal, and even Kieran look exactly the same? Mr. Gang did not say any of this. However, Mishgang said so. If you care about Kieran, it's best to start investigating this Jalal. The relationship between the two of them is definitely not ordinary. I feel that there is a very important connection between the two of them. However, I've been investigating too little, so I can only vaguely make some judgments. After that, Mr. Gang left a message for Kieran. I really have nothing to do with this Jalal. I only know of his existence. If you want to investigate him, then go to the Paradise Tower. However, don't bring Alusha along. It's best if you don't tell Alusha about this. After saying this, Mr. Gang left, leaving Noah with the coordinates of the Paradise Tower. Noah had no interest in Jalal, Kirkine, or the Paradise Tower. The reason why Noah asked about Mr. Gang was because the two looked too similar. Even their auras were vaguely similar. Moreover, he had a bad premonition in his heart, which was why Noah asked about it. As mentioned before, Noah's intuition was very accurate. That was why Noah said that he cared about Kieran. Now, Noah finally understood why he cared about this matter. Because of Alusha. He had a bad premonition before, but when Mishgang mentioned Alusha, it rose to the top. Connecting the dots, Noah felt that Alusha definitely had some sort of relationship with that Jalal or the Paradise Tower, and it was a very bad one at that. That was why his intuition had suddenly reacted to Kieran. Tightly holding the paper in his hand, Noah murmured. Looks like there's a need to investigate. As soon as he said this, a shy voice sounded from Noah's arms. No matter what you want to investigate, I'll help you. But before that, can you let go of me? Noah was slightly startled. He lowered his head reflexively and looked at his arms. Then, he saw her. She looked at Lebby, who had her hand on her chest and her petite body was twisting slightly. She seemed to be a little uncomfortable, and her face was flushed red with shyness. At this moment, Noah was tightly hugging Lebby's extremely slender waist, pressing her into his embrace. Their bodies were tightly pressed together, and Noah could even faintly feel the pair of small softness and Lebby's drumming heartbeat. Feeling Lebby's rapidly beating heart as if it wanted to jump out of her chest, Noah finally reacted. However, before he could let go, a low voice sounded from behind Noah. How long do you plan on hugging her? Oh. Yeah. Brother. Noah shuddered and abruptly let go of Lebby. He jumped up and distanced himself from Lebby. Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. I know. I still have memories before I fell asleep. I still remember falling in your direction before I fell asleep. Lebby also tidied her clothes and smiled awkwardly. Noah must have hugged me to prevent me from falling to the ground, right? Hearing this, Noah could not help but laugh dryly. Rather than saying that he hugged Lebby to prevent her from falling to the ground, it was more accurate to say that because of the appearance of Mr. Gang and the information it brought, Noah had long forgotten that Lebby was still in his arms. Furthermore, the reason he hugged Lebby was because he saw Lebby leaning towards him. Although Noah did have a gentle side, this time, he did not hug Lebby because he had such a considerate intention. It was truly a sin. Brother Noah. On the other side, Lisanna looked at Noah with a fake smile. Although I can roughly guess what happened, I still want to ask. You didn't do it on purpose, right? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Noah shook his head like a rattledrum. I definitely didn't do it on purpose. Really? Lisanna looked at Noah suspiciously and said unwillingly. Then I'll forgive you. Noah laughed bitterly. Had it been her usual self, she wouldn't have shown such obvious suspicion even if she didn't have absolute trust in Noah's words. Obviously, because of what happened last night with Mira, Lisanna was agitated. Don't be awkward. At that moment, Noah hugged her from behind and rested his chin on her shoulder as he said softly, Don't worry. I know it's my fault, and I also know that Lisanna will definitely forgive me. I also know that you don't mind that I have Mira, but you feel bad, right? Because. Perhaps it was because of Noah's hug, Lisanna finally stopped being awkward and revealed her inner thoughts. I'm not as pretty as Sister Mira, and I'm not as gentle as her. Now that Brother Noah has a better Sister Mira, I don't know if he'll forget me. You're such an idiot. How many years have you known me? Am I that kind of person? Noah gently bit Lisanna's earlobe. If you say something like that again next time, I'll have to punish you. Alright, I won't say it again. Lisanna playfully stuck out her tongue and gave her body to Noah. She leaned into Noah's embrace, her face finally showing her usual cheerfulness. Although she didn't receive a pledge of eternal love from Noah, nor did she receive any sweet nothings from Noah, Lisanna, who understood Noah, knew that such words were equivalent to a promise from Noah. Noah was indirectly telling her that he would never forget her. That made the little bit of uneasiness in her heart disappear, leaving behind only the warmth and happiness of a lover. Immersed in the warmth, the two of them had long forgotten where they were. Era. Before long, Myra's helpless voice sounded in their ears. You too, can you do this kind of thing when we get back home? Noah and Lisanna were both startled. They raised their heads and looked around, only to discover that at some point, everyone in the guild had woken up and surrounded them. You really surprised me. Kana looked at Noah with a teasing gaze. I didn't expect that not only Mira, but Lisanna as well. Noah. Levi covered her mouth with a look of surprise. You plan to date both Mira and Lisanna at the same time? Damn it. Jet and Troy were even more enraged. It's not just Levi, you even hugged Lisanna, you hugging maniac. Yes. Yeah. The male sorcerers in the guild all cried out in resentment. You bastard, you're so enviable. You're too bold. The female sorcerers also laughed out loud. Since Mira, Lisanna, and Levi all have a chance, Noah, why don't you give us a chance too? Levi was stunned and hurriedly clarified. No, it has nothing to do with me. As she said that, Levi seemed to recall Noah's hug just now. Her cheeks turned red again, and she kept sneaking glances in Noah's direction. Seeing this scene, Jet and Troy burst into tears. Chapter 391. The sun was setting in the west and the sky was filled with the glow of the sunset. With the help of the sparse light, Noah, who was holding a box in his hand, pushed aside the bushes and passed through the trees. After passing through a small path, the scene in front of him began to open up. Not long after, an open space with a clear river appeared in front of Noah. And on the bank of the river, a girl with eye-catching crimson long hair was waiting there. Ha ha ha. Amidst the awe-inspiring shouts, Elusha, who was wearing her usual ice-cold armor, held a knight's sword in one hand. Like a valkyrie descending from the sky, she nimbly ran back and forth on the bank of the river while waving the knight's sword in her hand at an extremely fast speed, bringing about waves of sword light. Clang clang clang. The crisp sound of the sword striking the air was like the sharp sound of something breaking through the air. Looking at Elusha's ghostly figure and the waves of sword light that flashed one after another, Noah felt as if he was looking at Elusha, who was diligently practicing her swordsmanship on the bank of the river when she was young. He couldn't help but let out a gentle smile. In the blink of an eye, so many years had passed. Whether it was Noah or Elusha, they had both grown up. Unlike the Elusha who could only use her swordsmanship in a clumsy way to grow up, the current Elusha's swordsmanship had already reached the acme of perfection. It was far from what the past could compare to. Moreover, Elusha was no longer the novice magic shooter who couldn't even obtain a work permit and could only stay in the guild to temporarily hone her magic. Instead, she was a true powerhouse. She had obtained the title of one of the 5 S-rank magic shooters in Fairy Tale, and also obtained the title of Fairy Queen. She was known as the strongest female magic shooter in Fairy Tale, and was also one of the strongest candidates for a true powerhouse. Thinking of this, Noah felt as if the events of his childhood were still vivid in his mind. One by one, they flashed through his mind, causing Noah to be immersed in the memories of his childhood. Unfortunately, this memory did not last for long. Noah? As a surprised voice sounded, the sword lights flashing on the riverbank all disappeared. Noah came back to his senses and looked in front of him. He saw Elusha's 2 knight's swords turning into rays of light and disappearing into Elusha's hands. Elusha turned her gaze towards Noah and said in surprise. How strange, you actually came here. What do you mean by that? Noah shook his head in amusement. He walked forward to the riverbank and looked at the flowing water in the clear river. This secret base still belonged to me, didn't it? If I didn't want to learn sword skills from you, you wouldn't know this place, right? Why are you saying it as if it's your own? Speaking of which, there seems to be such a thing. Elusha couldn't help but chuckle. She came to Noah's side and stood side by side with Noah, looking forward. I've been cultivating here all this time. I almost forgot that you were the one who brought me here. I didn't expect you to keep coming here. If it weren't for Mira and Lisanna telling me, I would still be in the dark. Noah shrugged. If I told Naz and Gray that you've been cultivating here almost every day, they would definitely understand why you're so strong, right? Don't say that. The two of them have been working very hard. Elisha turned her head and said to Noah in confusion. Now that you mention it, it seems like you haven't been here for a long time. That's right. Noah sighed as he said this. After all, if it's just pure training, it's already very difficult for my strength to improve. Now, if I still want to become stronger, blindly training won't work. I need to temper myself in actual combat or life and death battles, or find another way to improve. Naturally, the chances of coming here have decreased, and it's very difficult to come again. That's true. After hearing Noah's words, Elisha also recalled Noah's outstanding close combat ability and unfathomable strength. She couldn't help but sigh. You're now indeed above me. When will I reach the level where you can't rely on pure training to become stronger? That will prove that I've more or less caught up to you, right? Don't flatter me. You're already very strong. Noah pursed his lips and sat down on the ground. He placed the box in his hand on the ground. I brought you a gift of consolation. With that said, Noah opened the box and exposed the thing lying in the box to the air. It was a strawberry cake. Ilusa's eyes lit up, and she immediately sat down on the spot. Without hesitation, she grabbed the cake on the ground, picked up the fork placed in the box, and took a bite. Then, she said to Noah in a slightly cheerful tone while savoring the aftertaste. It's still as delicious as always. Just as delicious as always? Looking at Elisha, who only behaved like a young girl in love when facing her favorite food, Noah couldn't help but smile. I thought compared to before, the cake shop in Magnolia City has improved a lot in the way of making cakes, and the taste will also improve a lot. Hearing this sentence, Elisha was startled. Don't tell me you haven't tasted it before? Compared to sweet things, I prefer to have a lighter taste. Noah casually responded. And, just as I said, this is a gift of consolation for you. Elisha took another bite of the cake and held the box containing the cake. Her tone became ethereal. Really? Eating the cake you brought, I can't help but think of the scene when you first gave me a cake when I was a child. At that time, Elisha had some problems with one of her eyes and used a medical eye patch to cover it. She was a quiet child who only knew how to stay in the corner of the guild and sit quietly by herself. At that time, I had just joined Fairy Tale not long ago. You were the first guild member who interacted with me. Just like now, you gave me a cake. Elisha shifted her gaze and looked at Noah again. Actually, I always wanted to ask you, at that time, why did you want to give me a cake? Hearing this, Noah went silent. Why? Why did he want to give Elisha a cake and interact with Elisha? Noah did not forget his feelings at that time. When I first saw you, I knew that you were a person with a lot of stories, Noah said indifferently under Elisha's gaze. Elisha, in fact, in your heart, there has always been a part that no one can touch, right? Hearing this, Elisha's expression froze, and the light in her eyes also froze. Such a young child, to be able to resist playing with others in such a crowded place, either you are afraid of strangers, or you must have a reason to do so, Noah said as if he did not notice Elisha's change. But no matter how I look at you, you don't look like someone who is afraid of strangers, so I think you must have a past that you can't talk about, and it is definitely not a good past. Is that so? The expression on Elisha's face disappeared, and the gaze she looked at Noah became uncertain. So, at that time, did you do that because you sympathized with me? Sympathized? Noah laughed and shook his head. It would be good if it was sympathy, but unfortunately, at that time, the only feeling I had was envy. Envy? Even Elisha was stunned when she heard this. Envy? Envy that she was alone? Envy that she had a bad past? Was this something to be envious of? If it was someone else who said this, Elisha would definitely think that the other party was mocking her, but Noah was not that kind of person. Then, what did this sentence mean? Even if you have a bad past, a painful past, or even a desperate past, it is still a past that belongs to you. As if Noah saw through Elisha's thoughts, his expression became complicated. Having a past that can prove your existence, isn't it worth being envious? Elisha was stunned, and immediately seemed to have thought of something. She fell into silence, unable to speak. Chapter 392. In fairy tale, very few people knew anything about Noah before he joined the guild. Now in fairy tale, except for the old members who had existed before Noah joined fairy tale, the rest of the members thought that Noah was Makarov's grandson. Only the old members knew that Noah was adopted by Makarov. However, even the old members only knew that Noah was an orphan who was adopted by Makarov after meeting him by chance. They did not know why Makarov adopted Noah. After all, fairy tale had always accepted many orphans from all over the world. People like Elisha, Naz, Gray, Mira, Lisanna, and Elfman had all joined the guild when they were young, but none of them had been adopted by Makarov. Then, why did Makarov only adopt Noah as his grandson? As a childhood friend who grew up with Noah, Elisha naturally knew the reason. It was because Noah did not go there. According to Makarov, Noah seemed to have appeared in this world out of thin air. There was no trace of him living, existing, or leaving behind any traces, and no memory of anything before the age of 10. In Noah's memory, the first scene was when he met Makarov in the nameless forest. After meeting Noah, because of Noah's memory loss, Makarov did not hesitate to ask around about Noah's background. He helped Noah search for possible relatives in hometown, but the final conclusion was that Noah seemed to have appeared out of thin air. There was no trace of him ever existing. Under such circumstances, Makarov could not sit by and watch Noah, who did not even know who his biological parents were, appear in this world as if he had never existed. Therefore, he resolutely accepted Noah as his adopted grandson, hoping to bring him some familial warmth. To be honest, Elisha could not imagine how Noah felt when he had just joined fairy tale. He had no memories of his past, and he knew that he did not have any place in this world where he could or had ever existed. That kind of emptiness, blankness made Elisha shudder when she thought about it. Once, Elisha also had such thoughts. How good would it be if she could forget the past? But now that she thought about it carefully, was it really good to not have a past? Just like what Noah said, even if the past was bad, painful, or even desperate, it was proof of her existence. Compared to this, a life without a past, without any evidence of existence, that was the real horror. Fortunately, Noah met Makarov and joined fairy tale. He had a place that could prove his existence. Otherwise, Elisha felt that at that time, Noah, who had nothing in the real sense, would definitely be living a life worse than death. It would be like being in hell. I know that you may be very angry when I say this, but at that time, I really envied you. Noah laughed bitterly. Then, when I came to my senses, I had already unknowingly developed the idea of getting close to you. Everything that happened after that happened naturally. I'm sorry. Elisha said in a low tone. I reminded you of the bad past. We're the same, right? Noah sighed slightly. Am I not the same? I reminded you of the bad past? But I'm really grateful to you. Elisha's tone became sincere again. If it weren't for your share of the cake, perhaps there would never be today's Elisha Shukalito. You are the third person in this life to save me. The third? Noah looked at Elisha in surprise. Have you been saved by so many people? Yes, without you, I would have disappeared long ago. Elisha laughed self-deprecatingly. Because of Grandpa Luobu's rescue, I survived the hands of a group of demons. Because of your rescue, I have a new life, and, perhaps even Elisha herself did not realize. Elisha's hands had long been clenched tightly, and even a touch of pain appeared on her face. Anne. Jalal, these words were uttered in an inarticulate accent that bordered on the utterance of a dream. However, Noah heard it clearly. He heard it clearly. Therefore, when the name Jalal drilled into Noah's ears, Noah's heart suddenly tightened, and his hand subconsciously reached for his pocket. In that pocket was lying the paper with the address of the Paradise Tower written on it. At this moment, Noah finally confirmed his previous guess. Sure enough, Elisha and Jalal had an extraordinary relationship with the Paradise Tower. That was the corner of Elisha's heart that no one had been able to touch, a secret that even Noah had no way to know. Since childhood, Noah knew that Elisha's heart must be hiding an extraordinary secret. Now, Noah had finally touched the tip of the iceberg of this secret. Don't think about the bad memories anymore. As his heart began to become active, Noah looked at Elisha, who had a somewhat painful expression on her face, and changed the topic. Although that's also proof of your existence, if one doesn't look forward, there's no way to move forward. You won't be able to move forward, and you might even fall back. That's not the Elisha I know. Elisha lowered her head, and in the next second raised it up again, regaining her previous heroic spirit. Is that so? That's true. With that said, Elisha suddenly leaned her head on Noah's shoulder, and her armored hand tightly hugged one of Noah's arms. Just a little, let me lean on you. Noah, who was a little surprised that the always strong Elisha suddenly showed such a weak behavior, slowly relaxed his expression and body. He also raised his other hand and gently stroked Elisha's head, just like coaxing a child to sleep. No matter when, if you want to borrow it, I will lend it to you. So, please don't be shy and lean on me. After all, we grew up together since childhood, and no one can replace family. Hearing Noah's words, Elisha's slightly cold heart gradually warmed up, and a touch of peace and comfort appeared on her delicate face. She closed her eyes as if falling into a deep sleep, and didn't speak for a long time. Under the setting sun, a man and a woman leaned on each other by the clear river bank until the sun went down, and it was still the same as before. Of course, Elisha didn't know. At this moment, Noah secretly made a decision. In the living room of the Strauss siblings' home, Lisanna suddenly stood up and looked at Noah with a face full of anxiety. Big brother Noah. You're leaving again? Noah. Myra's gentle expression, which had always been gentle to Noah, dimmed. She seemed to have suffered a blow like Lisanna. Seeing this, Noah knew that Mira and Lisanna had misunderstood. Don't worry, I'm not going to cultivate this time. It's just that there's something I want to do, and there's a place I want to go to, Noah hurriedly said. If there are no accidents, I'll be back in about 10 days, or a month at most. It's very likely that I'll be back in 2 or 3 days. I won't be leaving for that long. Hearing this, Mira and Lisanna's expressions brightened, and they breathed a sigh of relief. Are you going to work? Lisanna asked. Can I go with you? No need, I'll be fine by myself. Noah scratched his cheek. I'm not going to work, I just have something to do. Don't worry. Seeing that the two sisters were still a little worried, Noah comforted them. Don't forget, even if you're worried about me, I have Bio by my side. Nothing will happen. Then do you need me to prepare anything for you? Mira asked considerately. You don't have any money on you, right? What about the travel expenses? Noah was speechless. Let me and big sister Mira prepare the necessities for your trip. Lisanna smiled mischievously. We'll also prepare the travel expenses for big brother Noah, don't worry. Noah could only laugh dryly, speechless. This time, he really was suspected of living off a woman. Chapter 393. Walala. The waves rolled back and forth in dazzling ripples, surging into the distance. There was an endless ocean here. Above the ocean, a stream of light flew across the ocean at an extremely fast speed like a meteor in the daytime. With a sharp whistling sound, it disappeared in the space. It didn't take long before it disappeared into the horizon and appeared in another place. With the help of the death feather, form of the magician, and speed none, Noah was flying towards the distant ocean at a speed that ordinary ships couldn't compare to. At this time, Noah, who was flying over the ocean, was holding a map in his hand. There was an extremely obvious X symbol on the corner of the map. That X symbol was Noah's destination, this time Paradise Tower. To be honest, Noah didn't want to delve too deeply into Elisha's past. After all, everyone had secrets that they didn't want to tell others. However, this time, Noah intuitively felt that he was very concerned. Otherwise, he wouldn't have specifically asked about Mr. Gang. Knowing that the reason he was so concerned about Paradise Tower was mostly because of Alusha, coupled with his conversation with Alusha yesterday, Noah finally decided to take the initiative to investigate Paradise Tower. Of course, investigating Paradise Tower was one thing. More importantly, Noah wanted to see that so-called Jalal. To be able to attract so much attention from Mr. Gang, and look exactly like Mr. Gang and Zeke, and to be able to make Alusha show such a painful expression, Noah felt that this Jalal must be the key to everything. Therefore, even if it was for Alusha, Noah had to investigate this so-called Paradise Tower. Using his memory, Noah identified the map in his hand and kept flying forward. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly stopped and floated in midair. It's this area. After confirming the location recorded on the map in his hand, Noah raised his head and looked around. After a second, he fixed his gaze on one of the locations. There was an island there. No. Rather than an island, it was more like a tower. It was like a tower that grew from the bottom of the sea. It was also like a towering tree that stood on the sea for a long time. Looking at the strangely shaped tower, Noah squinted his eyes. After crushing the map in his hand, his body spun. Pung! Dense black light gushed out from the death feather form of the magician, and turned into a solid thrust. Noah's figure once again turned into a meteor and swept towards the ominous tower that seemed to be under dark clouds. Dong 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 dong. Amidst the sounds of footsteps that were enough to cause the ground to tremble, many huge black shadows ran back and forth in the corridors as if they were patrolling, lingering in every corner. Noah poked his head out from a dark corner. Looking at the huge shadows, he frowned slightly. The bodies of the huge shadows were ferocious beasts with wings like ferocious beasts. On the backs of these beasts, there were soldiers wearing standard equipment and holding long spears. They were riding on the beasts and patrolling back and forth in the corridors. The security was quite strict. Originally, Noah thought that the security of this island built on the sea would not be too strict. Who knew that even if it was built in an unknown corner of the sea, the interior of the tower would still be so heavily guarded? However, this also proved that there was definitely something shameful or extremely important in this tower. Otherwise, in such a corner of the sea that was unlikely to be found, this tower that was difficult to find with a natural barrier did not need to be so heavily guarded. Noah, who was hiding in the dark, pondered for a while and decided to take action. Here, there were also some soldiers who were not riding on the beasts to patrol. When such a soldier passed by Noah's position, Noah suddenly flew out and silently appeared behind him. Paw dash. In a crisp sound, Noah's hand chopped cleanly on the soldier's neck. Goo dash. The soldier only felt a pain on his back and his vision blurred. He immediately lost all consciousness. Noah directly dragged the soldier who was knocked out by him into the corner. When Noah came out of the corner again, Noah had already changed into the standard equipment of the soldier. His whole body was wrapped tightly and he was holding a long spear. In this case, even if Alusha came, as long as she didn't have Naz's keen sense of smell, it would be difficult to find out that it was Noah himself. Just as Noah was thinking about what to do next, a voice called him from behind. Hey! It's time to gather. Hurry up and come here. With that said, a soldier wearing the same standard equipment as Noah came over and rudely poked Noah with the end of the long spear in his hand. Sir Jalal is going to give a speech at the venue. Everyone has to gather there. Don't tell me you forgot. Hearing this, Noah raised his eyebrows. Jalal is going to give a speech? No, I didn't forget. Noah pretended to shake his head in panic. I just want to go there too. Then hurry up. The soldier didn't wait for Noah and directly walked forward. If you're late later, then you'll be in trouble. Even if Sir Jalal is not as cruel as those hateful magic church, he will still punish those who don't follow the rules. If you don't want to eat, then continue to dawdle here. Immediately. Noah deliberately pretended to be frightened, but his mind was extremely calm. His body followed behind the running soldier and ran forward. This was a square at the bottom of the Paradise Tower. The surroundings were all made of rough stones. Even the floor and ceiling were made of stone bricks that were falling down. In such a place, all the soldiers wearing standard equipment were gathered here. The soldiers didn't line up in any sort of formation. They just stood there casually, but all of them raised their spears high up in the air and shouted loudly. "Sir Jalal! Sir Jalal!" Noah blended into the crowd and imitated the people around him as he raised the spear in his hand. He raised his head and looked forward. There wasn't any luxurious platform here. However, in front of the square, there was a stone staircase that extended upward, like a snake coiling in the tower. It wasn't spectacular, but the construction was quite grand. On a protruding platform above the stone staircase, there were several figures standing there. They were completely different from the soldiers in the square, wearing casual clothes. It was a tall and sturdy man with an iron shield covering his mouth and chin. Her hair was like a cat's ears, and her appearance and behavior were reminiscent of a cat girl. Her body was like a toy, with edges and corners. Even her head was a strange man made of square blocks. There was also a handsome young man with slightly dark skin who looked the most like a normal person. In the middle of these four people, there was a figure with a strong presence, but his entire body was emitting an evil aura. Noah fixed his gaze on that person, a glint flashing in his eyes. All it took was a split second for Noah to recognize the man. This was because he had the exact same appearance and build as Mr. Gang and Kieran. Other than that so-called Jalal, who else could it be? Looking at the figure that was exactly the same as Mr. Gang and Kieran, Noah shook his head. If it wasn't for the evil aura on him, Noah would have suspected that he was Mr. Gang or Kieran in disguise. They were too similar. There were a total of 3 people with this appearance, so how could Noah not be suspicious? Under such circumstances, Jalal stepped forward and reached out his hand as if he intended to embrace the world. "Comrades! Rejoice!" Jalal shouted at the soldiers in the square in an impassioned tone. "Our dreams! We spent 8 years to build this Paradise Tower. Today, it's finally done." Suddenly, the entire place fell silent. Oh, 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 oh. The next moment, astonishing cheers resounded throughout the entire arena. Chapter 394. Oh. In the entire square, all the soldiers seemed to have gone crazy all of a sudden. Like fanatics, they raised the spears in their hands and roared wildly in cheers. Despite the cheers, Jalal's voice still reverberated clearly in the air and drilled into everyone's ears. "My fellow citizens, do you still remember who the previous owner of this pagoda was?" His words made everyone's cheers stop abruptly. Noah was also shocked. He focused his attention and began to pay attention to Jalal's words. "That's right. I believe none of you will ever forget those cruel, inhumane demons who used us as slaves." Jalal clenched his fists and said in an impassioned voice. "Those guys were originally from the magic order that believed in black magic. In order to build this tower, they captured us from all over the world and made us work for them. We worked hard, but they didn't let us eat. They are the most unforgivable people in the world. However, we should rejoice that not only have we been liberated from those bastards, we have also obtained the ownership of this tower in our resistance." Jalal waved his hand vigorously like a fanatic trying to stir up the hearts of the people. 8 years have passed. Finally, we have built this Paradise Tower. It will lead us to the Paradise Tower in front of us, allowing us to obtain true freedom. Let's show those bastards who took away our freedom what we have accomplished. Jalal shouted. "Comrades! Let us use this tower together. Use this magic called our system. Resurrect the great man who can lead us to the paradise of light and freedom." Jerf. Oh! The cheers were even more shocking than before. It was so loud that it caused the air to tremble. It turned into sound waves that spread in all directions. In the crowd, Noah's expression changed as his heart trembled. Although Jalal's words seemed to be fanning the zeal of the soldiers present, Noah also obtained a few pieces of information from it. Firstly, the ruler of this paradise tower was not Jalal, but a magic order that believed in black magic. However, it was overthrown by the people here, and now Jalal was ruling this tower. Secondly, the true face of this paradise tower was a forbidden magic called our system. Noah had read about this in a book before. It was said that our system was a magic that could use the living as a sacrifice to resurrect the dead. In this world, magic that could distort life as it wished was the most forbidden existence. Therefore, those who studied our system were all a legal magic order that believed in black magic. They were the real evildoers. Because this kind of magic was too forbidden, as soon as it was discovered, the council would definitely send troops to eradicate it. Therefore, as far as Noah knew, all our system should have been suppressed by the council as early as 7 years ago, and disappeared in the long river of history. But now, this dangerous forbidden magic taboo appeared once again. Moreover, it was this paradise tower that had a close relationship with Elisha. Of course, this was not enough to surprise Noah. What really surprised Noah was no doubt the name that Jalal had just mentioned. Jerf. The most violent, evil, and powerful black magician in the history of the magic world, who only existed in legends. The ancestor of the black magicians who raised black magic to the extreme, created countless black magic and demons, plunged the world into chaos, and had the almost invincible power to destroy the world, the legendary villain. Jalal was actually planning to use our system to resurrect the most evil black magician in history? If this news were to spread, it would probably cause a panic in the entire magic world, and make the Magic Council and all the black magicians on the continent scared out of their wits. How could Elisha have anything to do with such a dangerous thing? Thinking of this, Noah remembered what Jalal had just said. The previous rulers of this paradise tower were a group of magic orders who believed in black magic. They captured people from all over the world and made them work as coolies to build our system. Could it be that before Elisha joined Fairy Tale, she was captured by the magic order and brought here as a slave to do manual labor like the rest of the people here? In this case, it would explain why Elisha's past was related to the Paradise Tower, and why she knew Jalal and had an unbearable past. But, in this case, how did Elisha leave here and join Fairy Tale? Noah felt that he had touched on a corner of the truth. From now on, the Paradise Tower will enter a state of full alert. After completing the instigation, Jalal began to give orders. We are about to succeed, and we are about to gain real freedom and become the residents of paradise. We must not make any mistakes at this most critical moment. So, my compatriots, pick up the weapons in your hands, defend our ideals, and protect this tower. Lord Jalal. Lord Jalal. Lord Jalal. Lord Jalal. The soldiers shouted the name of the ruler of the Paradise Tower in an orderly manner as if they were on a pilgrimage. The fanaticism in their hearts had already been aroused by Jalal's few words. Even if the people here were to die now, there would be many people who would be willing to rush forward. Unfortunately, no one noticed that an outsider had already mixed in with them. Noah looked at Jalal, who walked up the stone stairs with 4 bodyguards and disappeared from the square. He quietly retreated, hid his figure, and soon disappeared into the crowd. It's finally done, in the dim passage, the dark-skinned boy said excitedly. Our ideals are finally about to be completed, and real freedom is about to fall into our hands. Don't be happy too early, Zio, the burly man said in a deep voice. Right now, our system has not been successfully launched, and we still need to prepare a lot of things. Let's wait until it's done before we celebrate. Well, what's wrong with that? The vitality is the strongest. The cat-like girl said cheerfully. Simon, you're too serious. You should be more energetic. No. Only Miljana can be so energetic at this time. The square-faced man struck an exaggerated pose as if he was acting. You should be more nervous at this time. That's right. Just like when the main character in a movie is about to duel with the boss, what we need is not energy, but handsomeness, girl. We don't need that kind of thing, the boy named Zio said anxiously to the square-faced man. Wooly, is Jalal really ready to launch our system? The construction of the Paradise Tower has been completed, and it can be activated at any time. All that's left is the sacrifice. The one who answered Zio was not the square-faced man named Wooly, but the burly Simon. Originally, to revive a great person like Jerf, we need a lot of live sacrifices, but Jalal said that he doesn't want to do such cruel things like the magic church, so we just need to prepare a special sacrifice. A special sacrifice? Miliana tilted her head. What is it? Is it a cat? A cat won't do. Hi, girl. No matter how I think about it, it can't be a cat, right? Wooly tapped his forehead with his finger and lowered his head, making a handsome pose. I heard that it requires someone with magic power and a body comparable to the 10 great Saint Magisters as a sacrifice. That's right. Jalal already has a candidate in mind. Simon's voice became even deeper. This person is Elisha. When this name came out of Simon's mouth, the 4 people present all stopped in their tracks, and the atmosphere around them changed completely. Elisha. Zio's face was gloomy as she let out a creepy laugh. What a nostalgic name. Unfortunately, it's also easy to awaken the hatred in my heart. What should we do? Miliana asked timidly. Are we going to find little Elu? Just as she said that, a voice sounded from the tunnel where Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana were. About this matter, please explain it to me properly. Chapter 395. About this matter, please explain it to me clearly. Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana, who were still immersed in the heavy atmosphere of memories, were suddenly shocked. Their bodies tensed up almost reflexively, and they got into a fighting stance. A few poker cards appeared in Zio's hand. Simon clenched his fist like a judo master and lowered his body. One of Wooly's hands changed shape like a toy and turned into a gun muzzle. Miliana, on the other hand, was like a cat. Her hands formed into claws, and she bared her teeth. Who? Under the vigilant gazes of the 4 people, Noah, who was still wearing the standard equipment of the soldiers of the Paradise Tower, took off the mask on his face and revealed his appearance from the shadows of the tunnel in front of them. He walked out step by step. His dark and deep eyes were rippling with a cold light that was hard to detect as he looked ahead. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is whether what you said just now is true. What we said just now? Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana were slightly stunned. If I didn't hear wrongly, you said that Jalal asked you to prepare the sacrifice to activate our system, right? Noah suddenly smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. And this sacrifice is Elisha. Am I right? You. Simon said solemnly. Do you know Elisha? This name seemed to have an extraordinary meaning to Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana. At the mention of this name, not to mention Simon, even Zio, Wooly, and Miliana's expressions turned gloomy. This surprised Noah more or less. Originally, Noah thought that the only person in this Paradise Tower who was related to Elisha was Jalal. Now, it seemed that the 4 people in front of him had an unusual relationship with Elisha. However, from the moment they casually said that Elisha was a sacrifice, Noah didn't think that they were Elisha's companions. Even if he was in the past, he definitely didn't have that right now. It seems that Jalal is serious. Noah laughed, but even the 4 people present could hear the coldness in his laughter, and they couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Very well. Anyway, the investigation of the Paradise Tower is almost complete. There's no need to be secretive. Since you intend to target Elisha, I don't need to show any mercy. As soon as he finished speaking, a wave of mana gushed out from Noah's shoulder. It was as if it had turned into a vortex that hovered and gathered, forming an intricate geometric pattern. Buzz! Every precise geometric design resembled the muzzle of a laser cannon, and a large amount of mana gathered inside each magic array, causing each magic array to flash with a dazzling light. No! Simon, who had the keenest senses, widened his eyes and roared. Be careful. He only had time to say these words before the intricate geometric magic arrays suspended above Noah trembled, and a dazzling light burst out. Then, like a tide, magic cannons burst out from the intricate geometric magic arrays and flooded the entire passage. Boom! When that astonishing loud noise resounded from the Paradise Tower, on the surface of the sea, the corner of the Paradise Tower that stood there like a towering tree seemed to have undergone a shocking explosion. A burst of light burst out, stirring up a burst of thick smoke that rose into the sky. In a dim room on the top floor of the Paradise Tower, Jalal, who was sitting on a throne-like seat, frowned slightly and listened attentively to the loud sound that resounded throughout the entire Paradise Tower. Hearing the loud sound, Jalal raised his brows and turned his head to look at a shelf next to the armrest of his seat. There was a crystal ball placed there. To be precise, it was a magic crystal. Reaching out his hand, Jalal gently stroked the surface of the crystal ball. A surge of mana flowed into the crystal ball, causing it to flash with a solitary light. A moment later, an image was projected on the crystal ball. It was the image of Noah standing in a passage filled with thick smoke and flames with intricate geometric magic arrays suspended above his head. Oh! Seeing this scene, especially when he saw Noah's appearance, Jalal's eyes glowed, and he smiled. Why is he here? Jalal actually knew Noah. Interesting. It just so happens that the Paradise Tower is completed. To celebrate Gerald's rebirth, let's play a little game. After saying this, Jalal turned his gaze to the front and revealed a sinister smile. I wanted to hire an assassin guild to work for me, but I didn't expect to be infiltrated before I even started. I hope Simon and the others can play with him for a while. Huff. Thick smoke and flames mixed with strong shockwaves permeated the entire passageway, filling every corner in an instant. With the intricate geometric magic arrays suspended above his head, the area within 2 meters around Noah seemed to have fallen into a vacuum zone. The smoke and flames in the surroundings seemed to be deliberately avoiding Noah's position and automatically parted to the sides. The person who caused all this to happen narrowed his eyes and looked at the center of the smoke and flames in front of him. He said half jokingly, half seriously. This is really surprising. I thought that this attack would at least have some effect. I didn't expect that it actually didn't hurt you at all. What a strange magic. After saying that, Noah waved his hand, and a gust of wind formed out of thin air and blew away the smoke and flames in front of Noah, exposing the scene inside to the air. In the middle of a huge pit, there were a few poker cards that reflected the lonely light like mirrors lying there quietly. Upon a closer look, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana seemed to have entered the poker cards. Their figures became smaller than the poker cards and were reflected on the mirror-like surface. Gotcha. However, in the next second, a cracking sound was heard, and the surface of the cards with the 4 of them on them cracked open. Boom! The next moment, the poker cards exploded like glass. Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana appeared in the pit out of thin air. They were either kneeling on one knee or lying on the ground, looking at Noah in horror. Zio, in particular, seemed to have expended a lot of energy. She collapsed on the ground, panting rapidly with a face full of exhaustion. Just now, it was Zio who had used magic to seal Simon, Wooly, Miljana, and herself in the poker cards, allowing them to escape Noah's attack. Zio. Miljana hurriedly supported Zio with a worried expression. You. Simon and Wooly went forward at the same time and stood in front of Zio and Miljana to protect them. They looked at Noah angrily. Who exactly are you? Do you want to know? Noah glanced at Simon and Wooly. All you need to know is that I'm Elusha's companion. Elusha's companion? Wooly was stunned. Elusha's companion? Simon was also taken aback, but a thoughtful glint flashed in his eyes. Little Elu's companion? Miljana cried out in surprise. Why would little Elu's companion appear here? Companion. Zio's face was a little pale as she broke out in a cold sweat. However, she cast her gaze at Noah and said in a mocking tone. That sister who betrayed us actually has a new companion. It's really as Jalal said. She has long forgotten about us. Noah, who didn't want to say too much to Simon and company, couldn't ignore this sentence. His sharp eyes focused directly on Zio. What do you mean by that? Tell me clearly. Isn't it clear enough? Zio didn't look timid at all under Noah's sharp gaze. Instead, she shouted even more agitatedly. Then I'll tell you. Elisha Shukalito is a traitor. A traitor who once betrayed us. A traitor who betrayed her companions. Elisha betrayed her companions? Noah stared at Zio's agitated face. When he realized that she didn't seem to be lying, he frowned deeply. Elisha betrayed her companions? Is this possible? Chapter 396. No one knew Elisha better than Noah. This wasn't an exaggeration, but the truth. Although Noah had left Fairy Tale for quite some time, Elisha was the first friend of the same age that Noah had met in Fairy Tale apart from Gray. They were also childhood sweethearts who had grown up together. And to Elisha, Noah was the first person she had truly opened her heart to after joining Fairy Tale. She had once said that it was Noah who had saved her, so it was obvious how close the two of them were. The Elisha that Noah knew was the kind of person who looked strong on the outside but was equally strong on the inside. Although she had weaknesses, she definitely wouldn't run away from this weakness. She treated her companions better than herself and treated the people around her more important than herself. She was a truly selfless and heroic Valkyrie. How could Noah not understand such a person who had grown up with him, worked with him, played with him, and even bathed with him? To say that Elisha was a traitor who would betray her companions? Let alone Noah, even the members of Fairy Tale who didn't often interact with Elisha wouldn't believe it. However, Zio's excited expression didn't look like she was lying. Furthermore, Simon, Wooly, and Mariana had lowered their heads in silence. The atmosphere made Noah unable to tell that they were acting at all. With the contradiction between the two, Noah couldn't ignore Zio's words. What's going on? Noah's voice more or less turned cold. Speak clearly. We have nothing to say to you. Zio seemed to have recovered some of her strength. She stood up and held a few poker cards in her hand as she smiled sinisterly. After we lock you in the dungeon and capture Sister, we will give you plenty of time to reunite. When the time comes, you can ask her properly. Hi. Simon. Almost at the same moment Zio finished her sentence, Wooly shouted. Aren't you going to put on a magnificent show? The burly man named Simon suddenly took a step forward, and a considerable amount of magic power gushed out from his body. A magic formation spun and spread out from under his feet, instantly covering the entire ground. Darkness instant dash. It was as if something had suddenly spread to the surroundings, and Noah's field of vision was suddenly lost. The thing that spread out was darkness. Just as the word said, all the light in the entire space disappeared without a trace in a moment, causing the surroundings to become extremely dark. Not to mention seeing far away, one couldn't even see one's own hands. It was truly a case of not being able to see 5 fingers if one stretched out one's hand. Because Noah was strengthened by the protozoan virus, his night vision was better than that of an owl under the enhancement of various species' DNA. However, when the darkness spread, Noah still lost all of his vision and couldn't see anything. The reason was simple. The darkness wasn't night in the true sense, but a region without light created by magic. Noah's current situation was as if he had sunk into a swamp. No matter how good his night vision was, he couldn't see the swamp that was filled with mud. Faced with this situation, Noah was surprisingly calm. That is to say, if I don't subdue you, you won't say anything, right? Huh? Are you sure you're not mistaken? Zio's voice sounded from all directions and entered Noah's ears. The one who should be subdued should be you. With that, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air sounded from behind Noah. In the darkness that Noah couldn't see, Wooly's body, who was in an exaggerated posture, disintegrated into square blocks that resembled building blocks. Like cannonballs, they went against the strong wind and broke through the air, enveloping Noah like a curtain of rain. Bang! Unfortunately, before the cannonball-like blocks could land on Noah's body, a burst of violent magic turned into a storm. With Noah as the center, it suddenly surged and attacked in all directions. Dong! It was as if they had crashed into a solid wall. When the rain-like cubes that were flying towards Noah collided with the storm that was formed by the magic power, all of them were sent flying backwards. At a speed faster than when they came, they landed on the head of Wooly, who was left with only his head left. Bang! The sound of the collision sounded. Goo! Wooly let out a muffled groan. His head was instantly smashed by the various parts of his body that had turned into blocks. Like a smashed wall, his head fell to the ground. Wadash! The surrounding darkness didn't seem to affect Simon's companions. Seeing Wooly being defeated in one blow, Simon let out a cry of disbelief. He actually used magic to reflect magic? Can that kind of thing be done? Miliana was at a loss. Damn it! You monster! Even Zio seemed to be in disbelief as she roared at Noah. She grabbed the poker cards in her hand and threw them out. Ding, 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 ding. Amidst the crisp sounds, all the poker cards that Zio had thrown out turned into rays of light. They flashed through the air and shot out explosively. Pa! This time, Noah did not choose to waste a large amount of mana to reflect the spells that were targeted at him. Instead, he stomped on the ground forcefully, causing the ground to crack. At the same time, his body spun like a top and bounced off in another direction. Ding, 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 ding. The poker cards that had turned into rays of light fell to the ground. The sharp corners of the cards pierced into the ground before dissipating and returning to their original appearance. At this moment, Noah, who had spun like a top, flew past like a ghost and charged in Zio's direction. Wooly! Miliana! Realizing that she couldn't react to Noah's speed at all, Zio shouted anxiously. Cat binding! Miliana, who had reacted, hurriedly raised her hand towards Noah. During the spurt of magic, a flexible tube-like rope spiraled up like a whip like a tornado, rubbing against the air and shooting in Noah's direction. Polygon attack! Wooly, who had poked his head out of the fragments of his body, didn't put on airs anymore. He activated all the magic in his body, causing the cubes to float up again and fly out like bullets, shooting out rapidly. Ha! Simon, who had been maintaining the magic called Dark Moment, was even more straightforward. He charged directly in Zio's direction, or more accurately, in Noah's direction. He raised his fist and swung it at Noah. With a gust of wind, he smashed it fiercely at Noah. Come on! Even Zio seemed to be in a frenzy. She held a poker card between her fingers and charged forward instead of retreating. Suddenly, Noah had Zio charging at him from the front. Behind him was Miliana's whip-like attack. On his left was Simon, who was charging at him like an iron tower. On his right was blocks that resembled cannonballs. There were attacks from the front, back, left, and right. Facing this situation, Noah smiled coldly. He stretched out his finger, and his magic followed the trajectory of his finger and wrote a rune in the air, tick. That was the magic spell that had defeated all of the Phantom Lord's magic shooters in a single strike. Boom! With Noah as the center, a magnificent shock wave stirred up like an explosion. It spread in all directions, stirring up smoke and dust. Pa 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 pa. At this moment, regardless of whether it was the poker cards, ropes, cubes, or fists, they were all blown away by the violent shock wave. Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miliana only had time to cry out in alarm before they were all drowned by the shock wave. Boom! A corner of the Paradise Tower that stood on the sea once again exploded, causing the thick smoke that had begun to dissipate to rise and fill the sky once again. The soldiers in the Paradise Tower were finally alarmed. They rushed over amidst the commotion. The commotion was still ongoing. Chapter 397. Gravel continued to roll back and forth from the surrounding walls and the ground, causing a series of crisp sounds to ring out. Thick smoke and dust covered the surroundings and spread towards a hole that led to the outside that had appeared at some point in time. It was exposed to the sunlight outside and rose along the Paradise Tower, blowing towards the sky. Noah, who was standing in the tunnel that was in a sorry state as if it had been attacked by an explosion, patted the clothes that stuck to his body and flicked the dust away. Then, he looked around. Ugh, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana were lying on the ground in front, behind, left, and right of Noah. Their bodies were dirty, and they were moaning in pain as they struggled to move their bodies. From the outside, the four of them didn't seem to have suffered any obvious external injuries. It was mainly because their bodies had suffered an impact. Now, their bodies were in a state similar to numbness and pain, making it difficult for them to stand up. Seeing this, Noah frowned. Did I hit them too hard? How can I ask questions like this? Just as he said this, there was a commotion on the other side of the tunnel. Over there. The explosion just now came from there. Quick. Let's go and take a look. Let's go and take a look. Along with this voice, a series of messy footsteps came without any rhythm, causing Noah's frown to deepen. Looking at Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana lying on the ground and still struggling to move their bodies, Noah pondered for a while and sighed. Forget it, let's wait until we get to the bottom of this before taking action. With that said, Noah was just about to walk towards Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana when his footsteps suddenly stopped. He frowned again, raised his head, and looked up. Noah stared at the ceiling that was only made of stone. All of a sudden, he smiled. I see. Have I been discovered? After saying this, Noah retracted his gaze as if nothing had happened. Therefore, when all the soldiers gathered here arrived at the scene, it wasn't just Noah. Even Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana had disappeared, leaving the soldiers with a disheveled and messy scene. On the top floor of the Paradise Tower, Jalal, who was sitting in a throne-like position, looked at the crystal ball on his armrest and met Noah's eyes, who suddenly raised his head and looked at him in the crystal ball. Looking at Noah, who smiled on the crystal ball and retracted his gaze before taking Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana away, Jalal reached out his hand and touched the crystal ball. The image on it instantly disappeared. Sure enough, a guy who can control a gold-tier beast like that can't be a simple person. To be able to defeat Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana so easily, plus that gold-tier beast, it seems like I'm in some danger. Jalal showed a rare troubled expression as he hesitated. Do I have to call him back? This idea was rejected by Jalal as soon as it came to his mind. There are more important plans over there. I can't give up because of an accident. Let's see how things go. This was an empty room in the Paradise Tower. The room seemed to belong to ordinary soldiers. Not only were there no decorations, but there were also many beds arranged in a row. Obviously, this room didn't belong to anyone. Instead, it was like a dormitory, a large room where a large number of soldiers lived. Bang! In such a room, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana were tied up with thick ropes from who knew where, and were violently thrown to the ground with their butts touching the ground. It hurts. Miljana felt that her buttocks didn't belong to her anymore. Tears welled up in her eyes. Damn it. Zio also felt the pain, but like a rebellious teenager, she struggled regardless of the situation. Let me go. No. Even Wooly cried out in alarm. His voice actually carried a hint of despair. This isn't gorgeous at all. It's not cool at all. Simon was the only one who sat there obediently. He just kept looking at Noah, his eyes flashing. After the battle just now, although the four of them didn't suffer any obvious injuries, they had basically used up all of their magic power and were in a state where they couldn't use magic. And magic power was equivalent to life force. In a situation where their magic power was depleted to the point where they couldn't even use magic, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana felt weak all over. Except for Zio, no one wanted to waste their strength and struggle. Therefore, instead of doing something useless, it was better to buy time to recover their magic power. In that case, an ordinary rope wouldn't be able to trap them. Simon understood this, Miljana understood this, and even Wooly, who had been making a ruckus, understood this, so they didn't do anything. Only Zio seemed to be unable to accept the fact that she had lost, or rather, she was really unwilling to accept it and kept struggling. Looking at the four of them, Noah looked down at them in a condescending manner, his voice without the slightest bit of emotion. "Speak. Why did you say that Alusha betrayed you?" Zio glared fiercely at Noah, and even Miljana pouted angrily, ignoring Noah's question. "Hi, boy. Don't you know that negotiations are usually about mutual compromise?" Wooly responded to Noah, but he was like the male lead of a movie who was deliberately acting cool, revealing a smile that he thought was very handsome. "Let us go first, then we can consider answering you. How about it? Is that so?" Noah smiled, and his smile made the four captives feel a chill in their hearts. "In other words, if I don't torture you, you won't answer my questions obediently, right?" Torture? Zio, Wooly, and Miljana were shocked, and their faces were filled with fear. As slaves in the Tower of Paradise, which was still under the rule of the magic order that believed in black magic, Miljana and the others must have been tortured a lot back then. Now, after 8 years, they encountered such a situation again. It must have made them recall what happened back then, which was why they were afraid, right? Simon, who was the only one who remained silent, sighed and looked up at Noah. "Alusha was once a slave in this tower, just like us." Hearing that, Noah's face sank. "Indeed, Alusha was once a slave here?" "Simon!" Zio yelled. "That's enough, Zio," Simon said to Zio expressionlessly. "There's nothing to hide, is there?" Zio immediately gritted her teeth, snorted, and turned her head away. "Now, those who are still in this tower are slaves who were captured by the magic order from other places 8 years ago," Simon said in a deep voice. "It's the same for Alusha. She was captured by the magic order, and we met at that time." With Simon's recount, Noah finally learned of Alusha's unbearable past. Alusha, Zio, Simon, Wooly, Miljana, and the others were captured by the magic order that believed in black magic. They were slaves who attempted to build the system through labor. It was the same for Jalal. Under the situation of not having enough to eat or sleep, and being abused from time to time, Alusha and the others had been living in this hellish place. They were used as tools and did manual labor every day. One could imagine how cruel this was to a child. However, wherever there was suppression, there would be resistance. By chance, Zio, who was still a child at the time, proposed an escape plan, but she was discovered. Zio, who was interrogated by the magic order, didn't have the courage to stand forward and admit that she was the one who proposed the plan. In the end, Alusha was captured and tortured as a scapegoat. It was at that time that Alusha lost an eye. And with that as an opportunity, the slaves in the Tower of Paradise rebelled and began to riot. Originally, the riot would have been a success because Alusha had awakened magic during this process and defeated all the magic soldiers. But at that moment, an accident happened. Zio, Simon, Wooly, Miljana, and the others, who were waiting to escape on the ship, were informed of something by Jalal, who suddenly appeared in front of them. Alusha was immersed in the power of magic and betrayed them. Chapter 398. Alusha was immersed in the power of magic. She betrayed us? Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Simon. Is this what Jalal said? Yes. Simon nodded and lowered his head, as if he didn't want Noah to see his expression. Jalal said that Alusha was unable to learn the correct form of magic due to her awakening of magic during her resistance. As a result, she was devoured by the power of magic and lost herself. She went to the end of the road and abandoned everyone. Hearing Simon's words, Noah had a thoughtful look in his eyes. That Alusha was immersed in the power of magic? Fortunately, only Noah heard this sentence. Otherwise, he would definitely be laughed at by everyone who knew Alusha. As the famous fairy queen of the Fiori Kingdom, if Alusha was really immersed in the power of magic and lost herself, then it would be impossible to win back this title. Noah had been training with Alusha since he was young. He saw with his own eyes that Alusha practiced her outfit-changing magic 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times a day. Moreover, every time she felt that it was not enough, she would have a determined expression and continue to work hard. Was this what a person who was immersed in the power of magic and lost herself would do? People who were immersed in the power of magic and lost their sense of self would definitely not think of working hard to train. Instead, they would be like those magic orders who believed in black magic. Every day, they would frantically search for forbidden magic like our system, and try to find a shortcut to increase their power. Therefore, when Simon said such a sentence, Noah was sure that it was false. It was not that what Simon said was false, but that the truth was not what Simon knew. At least, Noah felt that it was definitely not like that. Sister installed bombs on all the boats and blew up all the boats that we used to escape. She escaped by herself. Zio finally said with hatred. If it weren't for Jalal, we would have been blown up by the sister who abandoned us all. Wooly and Milyana also lowered their heads and fell silent in grief. Sigh. Looking at his companions, Simon sighed and turned his head away as if he couldn't bear to look at them. You said that Jalal suddenly appeared in front of you when you were planning to escape, right? Noah's deep eyes stared straight at Simon. So what was Gerard doing before that? Jalal is being held captive, Simon answered honestly. Because Zio's escape plan was exposed, Alusha was locked up in the torture chamber to be punished. In order to save Alusha, Jalal escaped alone. With that said, Simon shot a glance at Zio and saw her biting her lips tightly as she tried her best to hold back her feelings of guilt. He sighed again. We waited in the cell obediently, but in the end, what we waited for was Alusha who lost an eye. And Jalal was discovered to have gone to save Alusha and was locked up in the torture chamber to be punished in place of Alusha. Simon raised his head, his eyes shining brightly. It was at that time that Alusha decided to resist and saved all of us to fight the magic order. Little Elu at that time was really handsome. Milyana seemed to recall the scene at that time. She smiled in a daze, but her expression soon dimmed again. But even little Eru was only a child at that time. She almost died. The person who saved Alusha at that time was a grandfather named Rob. Simon shook his head. Grandpa Rob used to be a very great magic shooter, but for some reason, he lost his power. In order to save Alusha, he used up all his magic power. And magic power is equivalent to life force. Wooly lowered his head and said. Grandpa Rob, who used up all his magic power, died just like that. Luobu. Noah muttered to himself. After a while, he blushed. Could it be the Rob that Grandpa knew? When Makarov was young, he had a group of close friends who had gone through life and death together. Among them, there was Polyusia, whom Noah had met when he was young, Yajma, whom he had met at the Senate not long ago, and several other leaders of famous guilds in the Fiori kingdom. Noah remembered that Makarov had also mentioned a person. It was a member of Fairy Tale, who suddenly disappeared many years ago. He was also a good friend of Makarov, Polyusia, and Yajma. That person was called Rob. Could it be that the missing Grandpa Rob was the same Grandpa Rob who was caught as a slave in the Tower of Paradise and saved Alusha's life, but lost his own life? It was because she knew that Rob was a magic shooter in Fairy Tale that Alusha joined Fairy Tale after escaping from the Tower of Paradise. You guys continue. Noah, who had sorted out everything, stared straight at Simon. And then? What happened? Later, because of Grandpa Rob's death, Alusha awakened her magic and defeated all the people from the Church of Magic. She ran off to save Jalal alone, and before that, we escaped back to the ship. Simon met Noah's gaze, and his tone became steady. During the period when Alusha went to save Jalal, we didn't know what happened. But later, Jalal suddenly appeared and told us that Alusha had installed bombs on all the ships. She abandoned all of us and escaped alone. That's how Sister was saved, by abandoning all of us. Zio gave Noah an ugly smile. You said that sister was your companion, right? You have to be careful not to be betrayed by that traitor. Just as he said that, the sole of a shoe suddenly enlarged under Zio's gaze. Bam! Noah kicked Zio's face fiercely. Ah! Zio cried out in pain as her entire head was filled with grief. Tears, snot, and even blood flowed down from her nose. Zio! Mariana exclaimed. What are you doing? Wooly also roared angrily at Noah. Noah retracted his foot and stood up. He stared coldly at Zio and spat out this sentence. You don't have the right to call Alusha sister. What did you say? Zio was enraged, and even her expression turned ferocious. What right do you have to say that? Because you are a heartless person. Noah didn't even seem willing to look at Zio as he turned his back. Because you suggested an escape plan, but you didn't have the guts to stand forward and admit it after being discovered. Alusha took the blame for you without a word. She lost her eye completely because of you. And after deciding to resist, Alusha also acted as the vanguard. If not for Alusha awakening her magic, you wouldn't have been able to escape, much less overthrow the magical order and escape your status as a slave. What did you do to such a person, to a person you call sister? Noah turned his head and scoffed in disdain. What you did was listen to the words of others and believe them without any hesitation. You let down Alusha, who saved your life, took the blame for you, and changed your fate. You don't have the right to call Alusha sister. A person like you doesn't have the right to be Alusha's younger brother. Noah glared coldly at Zio. It wasn't Alusha who betrayed you, but you who betrayed Alusha. You're lying. Lying. Zio's face turned red as she screamed crazily. Do you mean that sister didn't betray us? Were we all deceived by Jalal? At the very least, I believe in Alusha. I believe that she's definitely not the kind of person who would betray her companions. Noah's gaze turned ruthless as he looked at Zio. And you, since you can't believe in Alusha, then you don't have the right to yell here. You're just a pitiful person who failed to live up to the kindness of others. Zio's expression changed again and again. Even Wooly and Mariana couldn't help but waver. She didn't believe in Alusha, but weren't they the same? At this moment, Noah lifted his head and looked above with a cold glint in his eyes. Let me meet this Jalal and dig out the missing part of the secret. Upon hearing Noah's words, Simon's eyes flickered again. Chapter 399. Alusha had said that 3 people had saved her in this life. Now, Noah finally knew who the 3 people were. One was Luobu, a former member of Fairy Tale who had sacrificed himself to protect Alusha from the Church of Magic. The other was Jalal, who had been a slave of the Paradise Tower 8 years ago just like Alusha. He had rescued Alusha from the torture chamber but had been punished in place of Alusha. Now, he had become the ruler of the Paradise Tower. The last was Noah, the Noah who had given Alusha a new life. To Alusha, Luobu and Noah were people who had given her a rebirth in a certain sense. And since Jalal could become a scapegoat in order to save Alusha, it was obvious that he was also one of Alusha's companions. At least, he used to be. However, in the middle, something must have happened when Alusha went to save Jalal after the end of the resistance, which ultimately led to an unexpected ending. In any case, Noah would never believe that Alusha was the kind of person who would betray her companions. Therefore, no matter how he thought about it, the problem lay with Jalal. As long as he found Jalal, then all the problems would be solved. Noah might also be able to find a way to let Alusha get rid of her unbearable past. Last question. Noah turned around and asked Simon. Where is Jalal? Upon hearing Noah's words, be it Zio, Simon, Wooly, or Mariana, they were all shocked. Boy, don't tell me you're thinking of looking for Jalal? Wooly shouted exaggeratedly. I advise you to give up. That way, you can still maintain your beauty, boy. Jalal is different from us. We can only master our magic with Jalal's help, Mariana said softly. The strongest in the Paradise Tower is Jalal, and he is very, very strong. You are definitely not his match. Although you may not be convinced by this, have you really thought it through? Simon looked straight at Noah and said in a solemn tone. Jalal is indeed very strong, which is why he was able to become the ruler of the Paradise Tower. You have to think carefully. If you lose, not only will you not get anything, but you will also have to pay a heavy price. If you have a death wish, feel free to do so, Zio said in a nasty tone. In any case, you will soon taste true despair. Oh. Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at these people with a faint smile. Are you worried about me? Aren't you with Jalal? Hearing Noah's words, Milyana's group suddenly woke up. They exchanged glances with each other and became silent. Seeing this, Noah nodded in his heart. These people were not bad in nature, but they were a little too naive and easy to be used by others. Previously, they had always listened to Jalal, so everything they did was very orderly. Now, because of Noah's words, the four of them had begun to doubt Jalal's words. Their stance suddenly became unclear, so they subconsciously advised Noah. You don't have to worry about my matters. Noah squatted down and directly untied the ropes on Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Mariana. Meow. Mariana took the lead and made a puzzled sound. What are you doing? Zio was also stunned. You are not going to let us go, are you? Seeing that you are Alusha's companions who went through thick and thin with her when she was young, and that you might be used, I won't make things difficult for you. Noah threw away the rope in his hand and pointed a finger at the space in front of him. But don't think that I will let you go so easily. After saying that, Noah's fingers suddenly slid, and magic power flowed along his finger to write faintly discernible runes in the void. Then, he flicked the runes slightly. Before Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Mariana could even react, Noah had written 4 runes. With a flick of his finger, the runes suddenly flew out and imprinted on the chests of the 4 people, then disappeared. Only then did Mariana and the other 3 react. They hurriedly touched their chests, but didn't feel anything. What is this? This is just a precaution. Noah curled his lips and smiled. If you obediently find a place to hide, or directly leave this place, then nothing will happen to you. But if you still want to continue to make things difficult for me, or even have designs on Alusha, then your bodies will be burned to a crisp in an instant. Hearing this, Mariana and the other 3 shuddered and touched their chests even more desperately, as if doing so could expel the runes hidden in their bodies. Noah didn't pay much attention to this and let them do as they pleased. Although I don't know where it is, since it is the ruler, it shouldn't be below, but above, right? Noah looked up and the corners of his mouth slowly curled up. I hope we can have a pleasant meeting, Jalal. After saying that, Noah turned around and walked outside. Simon, who had remained silent from the beginning to the end, inadvertently saw the fairy tale guild emblem on the back of Noah's hand and fell into deep thought. After Noah left the room, the 4 present all stood up. This script is a bit wrong. Wooly said as if he wanted to cry but had no tears. Why does it feel like he is the protagonist? Why is he the only one who can turn around and leave so elegantly? This isn't right. That kind of thing is fine no matter what. Zio sighed and touched her chest. What we should think about now is what we should do. What that person said should be true, right? Mariana said timidly. If we continue to oppose him, his magic will burn us to death. That should be the truth. Simon nodded. So, from now on, we can no longer participate in the matter between him and Jalal. Zio, Wooly, and Mariana were suddenly at a loss. Then what should we do? Just as Noah expected, the 4 of them who did not know who to believe at first were completely at a loss after losing a clear goal. Only Simon recalled Noah's words and took a deep breath. Let me make it clear first. I am the same as that person. From the beginning to the end, I believe that Alusha did not betray us. This sentence made Zio, Wooly, and Mariana lower their heads, not knowing what to say. However, Simon's next words shocked everyone. I want to find Alusha. Find Alusha? Everyone was shocked, and Mariana hurriedly said. But, that person said we can't have any ideas about little Elu. I'm not going to capture Alusha. I'm going to ask Alusha for help. Simon said calmly. I feel that person is not simple. He should be able to deal with Jalal, but the most frightening thing about Jalal isn't his strength, but his cunning that has deceived us for 8 whole years. I'm worried that he will suffer. So, we have to find Alusha. But. Zio gritted her teeth. Where should we find her? Hearing this, Simon recalled the guild emblem on the back of Noah's hand and said word by word. Fairy Tale, Paradise Tower, top floor. This place was different from the rest of the Paradise Tower. At the very least, this place was not just made of unchanging stones. After entering the vast room on the top floor of the Paradise Tower, the first thing Noah saw was a huge crystal in the middle of the room that looked like an ice spike. Noah couldn't tell if this crystal was a magic crystal because it didn't contain any mana. Meanwhile, on the walls around the room were murals of vicious demons and humans with painful expressions. The murals made Shifang's hair stand on end. Although you are an uninvited guest, allow me to greet you for the time being. The one who said this was the blue-haired ruler sitting on the throne, looking at Noah, who was slowly walking over with an evil look in his eyes. Welcome to my Paradise Tower, Noah Dole. Looking at Jalal, who exuded a sinister aura, Noah's eyes glowed with a frightening light. Chapter 400. Separated by a huge crystal in the middle of a vast space, Noah, who was standing at the entrance, and Jalal, who was sitting on the throne, looked at each other in the air. Although there were no obvious sparks bursting out, the atmosphere around them had completely sunk and become extremely oppressive. Noah cast his gaze at Jalal, who was sitting opposite him, and slowly walked forward while speaking indifferently. You know me? This was the first real meeting between Noah and Jalal. However, Jalal was able to call out his full name, which meant that he had some information about Noah. Jalal smiled nonchalantly and stood up from his seat. He mimicked Noah and walked forward while speaking in a playful tone. Don't you know me too? Then you should know why I'm here, right? Noah's expression remained unchanged. I don't know, sir. Do you intend to answer my question? Which purpose are you referring to? Jalal stared at Noah, who was walking towards him. Information about the Paradise Tower? Or the truth of the past? However, to Jalal's surprise, Noah actually sneered. You must be mistaken somewhere, right? Noah lifted his chin slightly and cast a cold gaze on Jalal. Information about the Paradise Tower? The truth of the past? That's not the most important thing. Whether it's investigating the Paradise Tower or the truth of what happened here in the past, it's just to serve my only purpose from the beginning to the end. Noah stopped walking, reached out his hand, and clenched it tightly in Jalal's direction. I only have one purpose, and that is to understand Alusha's unbearable past and pull her out of the mud. That's right. That was Noah's purpose. The reason why Noah came here, the reason why he came to Jalal, was not because our system would resurrect the evil black mage Gerald, nor was it because he wanted to save everyone here. He just wanted to liberate Alusha from her painful past. Other than that, there was no other purpose. And this purpose was extremely unexpected for Jalal. That really surprises me. Jalal smiled, and no matter how one looked at it, that smile seemed to be mocking Noah. I thought that you came to stop the activation of our system, and also thought that you came to save everyone here. I even thought that the mainland had discovered something and sent you here to investigate. I didn't expect that you came here just for Alusha alone. This really surprises me. Are you really surprised? Noah stared at Jalal's evil face as if he wanted to see through Jalal's mind. Didn't you also try to save Alusha in the torture chamber in the past? You knew that you would die if you were discovered, but you still risked everything to save Alusha, didn't you? Are you talking about that time? Jalal's smile became even wider. That's because I hadn't awakened at that time. Awakened? Noah's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean by that? At that time, I didn't realize what a great person Gerald was. Jalal's expression became a little fanatical at the mention of the name of the greatest villain in history. It wasn't until I was imprisoned in the torture chamber in place of Alusha that I realized how great Gerald was. I realized that in order to obtain true freedom and the right to live in a real paradise, I had to resurrect Gerald. That's why I awakened and started to control everything. It's a pity that Alusa doesn't understand at all. She doesn't know how great of a person Gerald is. She even tried to persuade me to run away with my hard-earned labor force. Jalal shook his head regretfully. Although it's a pity, since Alusha couldn't understand, then I don't need her. It just so happens that I need a reason to keep everyone here, so I'll let Alusha contribute her strength to the great Gerald. Upon hearing that, Noah raised his head abruptly. His gaze was like an arrow, shooting straight at Jalal as if he wanted to pierce through him. In other words, the so-called betrayal of Alusha was all orchestrated by you? It couldn't be helped. Everything was for Gerald. Jalal unhurriedly revealed a sinister smile. Now that the Paradise Tower is finally completed, I don't need these anymore. If you want to know the truth, I'll tell you. If you want to save Alusha's companions, I'll let you save them. All I want is Gerald's resurrection. The smile on Jalal's face disappeared as he spoke, and his expression became a little terrifying and evil. Don't get in my way, Noah Doria. The entire place fell silent. Noah looked at Jalal without any change in his expression. After a while, he opened his mouth to speak. It seems like you're the one who was devoured by the power of magic. Now, the truth about Alusha's unbearable past was completely revealed. Although they didn't know what happened, Jalal, who replaced Alusha in the torture chamber, awakened his magic for some reason and was devoured by the power of magic. He didn't know if it was his magic or someone else's, and became a complete villain. Judging from Jalal's fanaticism and cruelty for Gerald, he was simply like a fanatic who had lost his sense of self and had no trace of rationality at all. That was why, in order to complete our system, Jalal deliberately let Alusha go and blew up all the escape boats so that all the slaves could only stay behind to help him build the Paradise Tower. All the bad reputation was pushed onto Alusha. Therefore, when Alusa first joined Fairy Tale, she had that unapproachable look, and when she talked about the past, she would have such a painful expression. Jalal probably took all the people here as hostages to threaten Alusha. He didn't want Alusha to expose the matter of the Paradise Tower, or even to come close to this place. Otherwise, he would kill Alusha's former companions. Jalal, who was willing to sacrifice his own life to save Alusha, was long gone. Now, there was only an evil person who had completely lost his sense of self and was devoured by the power of magic. Thud. Noah took a step forward. His gaze on Jalal was so cold that it pierced Jalal's bones. Is it because of you that Alusha is in so much pain? What do you want to do? Noah Doria. Jalal laughed out loud. Do you want to defeat me? Do you want to stop me? Do you want to avenge Alusha? You. Can you do it? As soon as he finished speaking, Jalal suddenly opened his hands. Abruptly, a dazzling light suddenly rose from the vast and dark space, bringing with it a layer of phosphorescence that sprinkled on the ground, walls, and ceiling before merging into it. Hum. In the next second, in the vibration of the air, an extremely huge magic array spun and spread out, covering the entire floor in an instant. It wasn't just the floor. A mysterious magic array appeared on the surrounding walls and the ceiling above his head. Like the surface of a cube, the magic array was connected to each other, forming a strange space. Noah only felt a blur in front of his eyes. The originally spacious room disappeared and was replaced by an endless stretch of rocky land. This is... Noah couldn't help but be surprised. Are you satisfied? This is specially prepared for you. Jalal raised his hands proudly and said in a loud voice. This is a kind of ancient magic. It's a large-scale magic used to open up a battlefield to your advantage. Originally, This kind of large-scale magic was used in war, but now it's being used for you. You should feel proud, Noah Doria. A battlefield to my advantage? Noah noticed the key words. Entering this battlefield means that you have to follow the predetermined trap. Jalal's voice gradually became more and more excited. And the rule of this battlefield is that only two people can exist. Now, Noah understood. Jalal laughed out loud. That's right. Your golden wolf can't howl. Chapter 401. Golden Wolf? Jalal knows about the existence of Golden Wolf Bio. This guy had clearly been staying in the Paradise Tower all this time, building the R system. Under such circumstances, he was still paying attention to the outside world, including his own information. Noah frowned slightly and tried to sense the situation in his mind. Noah was still able to communicate with the Golden Wolf, Bio, through his mind. However, just like what Jalal said, Noah couldn't call out Golden Wolf Bio at all. It was as if Golden Wolf Bio was locked in his body and couldn't come out at all. This was a battlefield that could only exist in two people. What else can you do without that Golden Wolf? Jalal smiled coldly. My Paradise Tower is still missing a body and magic power equivalent to one of the 10 great saint magicians as a sacrifice. Your Golden Wolf is just right. I'll let you offer your strength to the great Jerf. After saying that, Jalal's eyes, which were full of tattoos, opened and closed, and the eyeballs inside disappeared completely, replaced by a hideous and terrifying pattern. It was as if a demon had attached itself to Jalal's body and turned one of his eyes into a demon's eye. In the next moment, Jalal moved. Wang! A powerful magic power that looked like a dark, filthy gas suddenly rose from Jalal's body. Let me see what you've got. Grandson of Makarov. Jalal raised his hand, and magic power that looked like black water suddenly rose from his palm and turned into a tentacle-like shadow. The tentacle-like shadow trembled slightly, and like a man-eating vine that was crawling toward its prey, the tentacle-like shadow rushed toward Noah with a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Noah glanced at the shadow that rushed toward him. His eyes narrowed little by little, and a hint of mockery flashed through his eyes. He didn't move at all. A moment later, two tentacle-like black shadows suddenly arrived with two gusts of wind. The sharp force was accompanied by an ear-piercing sound as it tore through the air. One from above and one from below, it ruthlessly lashed at Noah. Jalal's attack position was quite tricky. One on the top and one on the bottom, they happened to be in two difficult positions. If Noah chose to guard against only one area, then he would definitely be hit by the other. Clearly, even after sealing Bio, Jalal still did not underestimate Noah. It was a pity that Jalal had miscalculated Noah's strength. Under Jalal's gaze, Noah, who was standing still like a statue, shuddered violently when the two pitch-black attacks were about to hit him. Jalal could only see that Noah's body suddenly turned into an afterimage. Instead of retreating, he moved forward, and in the next moment, two phantoms shot out from Noah's body. Those were actually two fist shadows. The two fist shadows and the two tentacle-like shadows suddenly collided. Bang! In an instant, an extremely terrifying force erupted from the collision, as if it had materialized. A low muffled sound was heard, and a fierce force gushed out like a flood, shaking up a gust of wind, and then both dissipated. Jalal's pupils suddenly shrank. Then, in his pupils, an afterimage passed through the strong gust of wind, as if it was shuttling through the cracks of space, and rushed toward him. Seeing this scene, Jalal realized that he had underestimated Noah's strength. At first, Jalal thought that even if Noah could subdue the Golden Wolf Bio, it proved that he had some ability. But in the battle with Joseph, Noah did not make a move, and let the Golden Wolf Bio fight instead. That must be because his strength was not as strong as the Golden Wolf Bio, and it might even be far inferior. Therefore, Jalal guessed that even if Noah's strength was very strong, it could not reach the level of the 10 saints. And with Jalal's current strength, although it had not reached the level of the 10 saints, it was not far from it. Therefore, Jalal thought that it would not be difficult to defeat Noah in a one-on-one duel. However, seeing the strength and speed of Noah's magic, Jalal knew that he had guessed wrong. At that moment, Jalal stamped his foot, and his figure rapidly retreated. At this moment, an afterimage appeared, and Noah's figure was exposed in Jalal's vision again. His whole body shook, and a burst of violent magic vibrated out, turning into a substantial impact, like a storm, spreading in all directions. Wadash! Jalal's expression finally changed, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. This magic. How is it possible? As soon as he finished his sentence, the substantial impact of the magic caught up with Jalal, who was retreating, and fiercely collided with him. Boom! The ferocious impact vented on Jalal's body, and he was forced to retreat. His feet scraped a long mark on the ground, and he let out a muffled groan. A dull pain came from his chest, and some cold sweat appeared on Jalal's forehead. Chi! Before Jalal could catch his breath, a faint sound of something breaking through the air resounded. A black shadow suddenly appeared in front of Jalal, raised its head, and fixed its cold eyes on Jalal's face. Then, a shining fist covered by a vortex of airflow entered Jalal's eyes. Hiya! A sense of crisis rose in Jalal's heart, and his face became slightly crazed. He roared and suddenly stretched out his hand, which was shrouded in black light. It was like a black beast's claw, and with a wave of magic, it struck out fiercely. Suddenly, the fist carrying the bright vortex of airflow and the black beast's claw collided with each other like cannonballs. Bang! The shockingly loud sound was accompanied by a burst of violent wind that suddenly attacked in all directions. Kacha kacha kacha! The ground made of magic cracked under the attack of the violent impact wind, and the ground at the center of the impact directly exploded, sending countless gravel flying in all directions like bullets. It's not over yet. Jalal's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his hands formed a palm shape. An extremely evil magic fluctuated in the center of his palms, and as Jalal struck out his palms, it turned into two spiraling black lights that shot toward Noah like sharp spears. If an attack like a beam of light fell on a human body, it would definitely be able to penetrate the fragile human body and open two bloody holes in it. However, Jalal didn't notice it. At this moment, Noah's figure was slightly illusory. Under such circumstances, Jalal's beam of black light finally closed in and hit Noah's body heavily. However, at the moment of impact, it strangely penetrated through Noah's body and fell to the ground behind. Bang! The ground that was hit by the black light exploded, and a cloud of smoke and fire rose. When the beam of black light penetrated Noah's body, Jalal's expression changed greatly. That was because it was only an afterimage. Is that it? Just as Jalal's expression changed greatly, a somewhat cold palm was gently placed on his back without him noticing. Jalal's hair stood on end, and all the hair on his body suddenly stood up. If that's the case, then let this battlefield made of ancient magic be your grave. As soon as the voice fell, the hand that was placed on Jalal's back shook and flashed with a dazzling phosphorescent light. Bang! The magic bullet that was shot out at zero distance was absolutely unavoidable. It exploded directly on Jalal's back, and a cloud of blue fire burst out. Jalal didn't even have time to make a sound before the violent impact from behind vented all on his body. Jalal was suddenly sent flying as if he had been hit by a truck. Bang! Jalal landed on the ground with a dull thud. He rolled a few times on the ground in a sorry state before he finally stabilized himself. His body went limp and fell to the ground. From the moment Jalal launched his attack on Noah to the moment he fell to the ground, the whole process took less than 10 seconds. In just 10 seconds, Jalal was defeated. Chapter 402. Whoosh! In the battlefield created by ancient magic, a storm was blowing violently around Noah, bringing along waves of dust and wind. He stood on the rocky ground like the eye of a typhoon. Gulp! Jalal, who had collapsed on the ground, clutched his chest. However, the pain came from his back, which made his face turn pale. He struggled to lift his body and cast his gaze at Noah, who had turned into the eye of the typhoon, with a complicated expression in his eyes. He was shocked by Noah's strength that was beyond his expectations. He was also in disbelief that he was defeated by Noah in just 10 seconds. However, there was also an indescribable ecstasy in Jalal's eyes. Jalal stared at Noah, whose entire body was erupting with vast amounts of mana as if it was a sea wave, squandering it in the most wasteful way possible and turning it into substantial waves that swirled around him like a tornado. After a long time, Jalal suddenly smiled. Ha. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. That was a crazy laugh triggered by the ecstasy in his heart. This must be fate. Fate is on my side. There's no way to stop Jervis's resurrection. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Jalal laughing like a madman, Noah frowned deeply. How could Jalal laugh so happily in such a situation? If it were someone else, Noah would definitely think that the other party had been driven crazy. However, although Jalal seemed to be crazy, the ecstasy in his eyes was real, as if he had encountered something great. That burst of ecstasy even overshadowed the blow brought to Jalal by his defeat at the hands of Noah, making Jalal laugh like a madman. What? Noah sensed that there might be a reason that he didn't know, so he asked sarcastically. Are you that happy to be defeated so cleanly? Happy. Of course I'm happy. Jalal laughed as he struggled to stand up. Even though he still had a painful expression on his face, he was still laughing crazily. Especially when he looked at Noah, his eyes were full of fanaticism. Because the conditions for Jervis's resurrection have finally been met. Ha 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 ha. Jalal's ear-piercing laughter reverberated throughout the battlefield constructed by ancient magic for a long time. At the same time, in a conference room of the Fiori Kingdom's council branch, Zeke, who was discussing a topic with the surrounding counselors, suddenly froze, and then became ecstatic. Ha. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Just like Jalal on the other side of the world, Zeke suddenly laughed wildly without warning. He was abnormally excited. The counselors sitting in the other seats were all stunned. Even Urudia couldn't help but stare blankly at Kaiklane with a face full of astonishment. Zeke, what are you doing? Oge frowned and snorted coldly at Zeke. We're still in the middle of a meeting. You don't deserve your status as a counselor if you act so presumptuously. Counselor? Zeke looked around at everyone in the room with a sarcastic expression. That status, you old farts should cherish it. Leaving behind these words, Zeke's figure slowly became illusory. Not long after, he disappeared. All the counselors stood up in shock. What's wrong? Ajma exclaimed. What's going on? Just as he finished speaking, the ground suddenly shook. Pa, 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 pa. While the counselors were caught off guard, the surrounding walls, ceilings, floors, and even tables and chairs all fell into a weathered state, shattering bit by bit amidst a series of crisp sounds. Wah! Some of the cowardly counselors screamed and sat on the ground due to their weak legs. In the middle of these counselors, an enchanting figure stood there unaffected. It was none other than Eurulia. Although I don't know what happened, there seems to be some unexpected situation on the other side, making the plan go more smoothly. Urusha stretched out her hand and held a slowly rotating magic array as if she was holding a treasure. In that case, I can't let you get in the way. Hearing this, some of the more sharp-minded counselors, including Ajma, immediately understood. Both Zeke and Urusha were villains who had infiltrated the council for a certain purpose. At the same time, Noah, who was still on the battlefield constructed by ancient magic in the Paradise Tower, looked at Jalal who was still laughing maniacally. Suddenly, he raised his head as if he sensed something and looked in front of him, which was right next to Jalal. There, Chicharito, who had disappeared from the council, slowly appeared beside Jalal like a phantom. His wild laughter was almost identical to that of Jalal's. Noah's gaze suddenly froze. It's you? I didn't think we'd meet again so soon. It was completely different from the last time they met. This time, Kieran's body was filled with the strange yet familiar evil aura that Noah felt at the same time. It was unfamiliar because Zeke didn't have such an evil aura in the past. The familiarity was due to the evil aura on Jermaine's body, which was exactly the same as that on Jalal's body. Noah's outstanding sensing ability and keen intuition allowed him to finally notice something. In the past, Noah had always felt something off about Zeke's body. Now, Noah understood the origin of this sense of dissonance. Oh. Jalal and Zeke raised their eyebrows at the same time. Did you notice? It should be said that you didn't notice until now. Your concealment skills are pretty good. Looking at Jalal and Zeke, who had the same expression, like two sides of a mirror, Noah laughed coldly. I didn't think you'd get a body of thoughts to sneak into the council. You've put in a lot of effort, Jalal. Yes. Body of thoughts. Zeke was Jalal's body of thoughts. The so-called body of thoughts referred to a three-dimensional projection or a doppelganger. In other words, Jalal and Zeke were not two different people, but one and the same. In order to not expose the identity of the body of thoughts, you've divided half of your magic into your body of thoughts, so that your body of thoughts can use magic on its own and act on its own, just like a real person, right? Noah was speechless. To think that even my sensing ability could only detect something amiss. Those fellows from the council are done for. Because it's necessary. Zeke, or more accurately, the body of thoughts of Jalal's doppelganger, grinned at Noah. Although the Tower of Paradise is being built in an orderly manner, if we want to activate our system, we're missing the most important and essential thing. Magic. Jalal raised one of his fists, and magic fluctuated like a black gas. If we want to activate magic, we definitely need magic. It's a pity that our system requires an enormous amount of 7 billion concepts of magic power. That's the amount of magic power that can be gathered by gathering all the sorcerers in the world. I don't know if that's enough magic power. Zeke narrowed his eyes. That's why we set our sights on the council's magic elven power. Hearing this, Noah's eyes flashed. Magic elven power. That was the council's strategic weapon. It was a combination of sorcerers with various attributes, and was equipped with various magic instruments. It could be fired from a distance using a satellite magic array, and was similar to a satellite ray, a super space-time destruction spell. It was said that once the magic elven power was activated, its power was enough to destroy a country. One could imagine how terrifying this super space-time destruction spell was. However, it was precisely because it was so powerful that the mana contained within it was definitely extraordinary. It was not strange that Jalal would set his sights on this. But now, there's no need. Jalal's tone changed, and he looked at Noah with fanaticism. Because I already have a better source of magic. Chapter 403. Seeing Jalal and Zeke staring at him with eyes full of ecstasy and fanaticism, and the meaning behind their words, Noah's face gradually turned cold. So that's how it is. So you've turned your attention to me? Noah finally understood why Jalal was so ecstatic. It was because the 7 billion concepts of mana that would take a lot of effort to gather, and it was said that even the magic shooters in the world could not gather it, was now right in front of Jalal. That's right. Noah was being targeted. Because of the unrestrained squandering of magic power, Jalal discovered the vast, ocean-like magic power in Noah's body and made the judgment that Noah himself could meet the demand of the 7 billion concepts of magic power. Perhaps, in terms of power, Noah had no way to achieve the super-destructive power that could destroy a country like the magic elven power. However, in terms of the amount of mana in Noah's body alone, even if it couldn't be said to be endless, it could be said to be boundless. It was definitely comparable to the strategic weapons of the council. It was because of this that Jalal was so ecstatic. In other words, Jalal wanted to use Noah as a source of mana for the system and use Noah as a sacrifice. To appear here when the Paradise Tower is about to be completed, I have to say, this is simply fate, Jalal and Kieran said in unison, full of confidence. You'll be the sacrifice for Gerald's resurrection and submit here. As soon as he finished speaking, Jalal's body became illusory. Like mist, he floated back into Jalal's body and became one with him. Wang. Along with the sound of the space vibrating, an oppressive magic power spread out from Jalal's body, filling every corner of his body. Even his aura rose fiercely, becoming incomparably powerful. If Jalal's strength wasn't at the level of one of the 10 great Saint Magi before, then now, his strength was definitely at the level of one of the 10 great Saint Magi. That was only natural. Kiran, who had half of Jalal's mana, originally had the title of one of the 10 great Saint Magi. Although Kiran's strength hadn't reached the level of a 10 saint, he wasn't far from it. In addition, his status as a counselor and the other requirement to become a 10 Saint Magus was to have a good character. This requirement allowed Kiran, who had concealed his true identity, to be recognized. It wouldn't be difficult for Kiran to become a 10 saint. Now, half of his mana returned to Jalal, who wasn't far from becoming one of the 10 great saints. It wasn't strange at all that Jalal's strength had reached the level of one of the 10 great saints. Now, Jalal was probably on par with people like Makarov, Joseph, Kildas, and Laxas. He might even surpass them. Let's start the second round. Jalal clenched his fist and sneered. His whole body was covered in blazing magic power. His voice carried a sense of oppression. I'll let you see my real magic. Saying this, Jalal crouched down like a cheetah and put his hands on the ground. His eyes were fixed on Noah. A golden magic array spun out from the ground under Jalal, and a dazzling golden light covered Jalal's body. Meteor. His voice seemed to have turned into an echo as it reverberated in the surroundings. Chi. Along with a faint sound of breaking through the air, Jalal, whose body was filled with golden light, turned into a meteor in the truest sense of the word. Then, he suddenly shot out violently. His speed was even faster than that of the golden wolf, Bo. Noah, who was calm and unruffled, had just turned serious when Jalal suddenly appeared in front of Noah. His whole body was covered in golden light, and his eyes flashed with evil light like a meteor. He suddenly clenched his fist, condensed his mana, and smashed it toward Noah's chest without any fancy moves. This punch wasn't tricky or ruthless. The only thing they had was the terrifying attack speed brought about by their terrifying speed. Under the influence of such a terrifying attack speed, the air around Jalal's fist was slightly disordered. It was as if an invisible vortex had formed around Jalal's fist. With an ear-piercing sound, he swung it forward. However, from beginning to end, except for Noah's obvious emotional fluctuation when he knew that Jalal had schemed against Alusha, Noah had always been calm and composed. With a calmness that was absolutely unbelievable to others, Noah judged that Jalal's strength had greatly exceeded his previous strength after Zeke's return and the use of the magic called Meteor. After he had the strength of a 10 saints, the mana in his body roared and flowed like a flood. Another vibration sound was heard, and a burst of rich white light quickly gushed out of Noah's body. Like a shock wave, it collided with Jalal's heavy fist. Bang! At the moment of collision, a loud explosion suddenly sounded. It was the sound of the bright brilliance of the magic called Meteor on Jalal's body exploding. Pa! Without the help of the super-fast speed of Meteor, Jalal's straight punch was like a paper tiger to Noah. He just raised his hand and firmly caught it with a crisp sound. Jalal, who was confident in his super-fast attack, had a stiff expression on his face as he cried out in astonishment. You crushed my magic? You actually have the same magic as Kilda's? So you didn't know? Noah suddenly smiled. Then I'm really sorry. While speaking, Noah's hand that was holding Jalal's fist suddenly burst with a ball of rich white light. Knowing the true nature of Noah's magic, Jalal knew that if he did nothing, then in the next moment, it would not be his magic that would be crushed, but his arm. This made Jalal couldn't help but shiver. His somewhat arrogant attitude due to the return of all his strength disappeared without a trace. He didn't dare to be arrogant anymore. Meteor. Calling out the name of his magic in a more urgent voice than before, Jalal's body was once again covered by the bright brilliance. His figure once again turned into a meteor, fiercely breaking free from Noah, and in a breath, retreated rapidly. Whoosh! Under the sharp sound of breaking the air, Jalal, who had turned into a meteor, seemed to want to surround Noah. With Noah as the center, he drew a big circle, blocking all of Noah's escape routes with his own strength, and his speed was getting faster and faster. This Jalal is really something. Even if his strength is not as good as Bio's, his speed is already above Bio's. While a touch of surprise flashed in his heart, Noah felt a chill on his back. He immediately clenched his fist and fiercely smashed it behind him without hesitation. Bang! His fist swung through the air, and a figure just happened to flash out from behind Noah. His fist was faintly suffused with some black gas under the magic power, and when Noah's fist was about to hit him, he also swung his fist, and in a muffled sound, the two heavily collided. Chi! However, Jalal's fist only touched the ground for a moment, and the moment it collided with Noah's fist, he suddenly withdrew his fist. Golden light burst out from his body, and his meteor-like figure spun freely in the air, turning into a ray of light, leaving behind a long tail of light in a semicircle, and following a semicircle arc, he swept past Noah's body. At this moment, Noah finally let out a gasp of astonishment. Too fast. This time, before he could finish his words, the meteor-like figure came to Noah's back in the blink of an eye. He clenched his fist and fiercely smashed it toward Noah. With the help of the sensing ability, Noah noticed this blow in time. When Jalal's fist was only half a meter away from his back, he suddenly turned around and raised his hand to block. Bang! In another muffled sound, Jalal's fist solidly fell on Noah's raised arm, and a terrible force was released from it, causing Noah to stumble back a few steps. Then, he shook his shoulder hard and forcibly stabilized his body. For a moment, Noah was actually at a disadvantage. Chapter 404. After defeating Noah with one blow, Jalal's confidence seemed to have returned once again. His figure turned into a meteor and hovered around Noah, while his piercing laughter was constantly heard. No matter how strong you are, as long as you can't catch up to my meteor, you won't be able to defeat me. You'd better obediently become Jalal's sacrifice. Hearing this, Noah slightly frowned. Relying on his excellent sensing ability, he continued to track Jalal's movements, but his mind was active. Indeed, in terms of strength, Noah was definitely superior to Jalal, but if he couldn't catch up to Jalal's speed, he would also be exhausted to death. While Noah's mind was active, an oppressive gust of wind came from behind him again. Surprisingly, it was Jalal's extremely fast attack with the help of his super high speed. Show me. Magician. Just as Jalal's attack was about to land on Noah, the incantation that summoned the soul and released the true power of the soul reverberated. Bang! A burst of cold blue flames burst out from Noah's body, startling Jalal. He hurriedly stopped his attack, manipulated his body, and dashed away like a meteor, putting some distance between them. The blue flames surged in the air like a volcanic eruption. At this moment, a black shadow cut through the air, parting the blue flames. Like a ray of black light, it suddenly shot out. Although the speed was not as fast as Jalal's meteor, the gap was not as big as before. So, Jalal only saw a blur in front of him, and a figure equipped with two pairs of inorganic mechanical wings the size of half a man on the back, with a lot of black light spurting out from the ports of the wings to form two pairs of huge wings of light imprinted in Jalal's eyes. Annihilation strike. The air whistled, and a fist carrying a dazzling vortex of air followed closely behind, bringing a strong wind with it, and heavily smashed into Jalal's chest. Hiya! Jalal was shocked, but his reaction was not slow. He shouted loudly, and the black magic swirled around his fist like a vortex. Instead of retreating, he moved forward to meet Noah's attack. Boom! The fist collided with the fist, and a powerful force burst out that caused the air to tremble a little. However, the power of Noah's annihilation strike was obviously stronger than Jalal's fist, which was strengthened by magic. When the two fists collided, a strong impact was transmitted to Jalal's arm, and then through Jalal's arm, it hit Jalal's body. Coo! After suffering such a heavy blow, Jalal let out a muffled groan from his throat. Golden light flickered on his body, and his light-like figure flashed away like a fish. Seeing this, Noah knew that he could not catch up with Jalal even with the help of the death feather form, so he did not pursue. Instead, he took a step back, squinted his eyes, and fully activated his sensing ability to detect Jalal's position. Apart from the crush, do you still have that kind of magic hidden? Jalal's angry voice came from all around. Obviously, the previous blow had caused him some damage, which made him a little angry. But, even so, can you catch up with me? As soon as he finished his words, a meteor flew out in a spiral, and actually shot toward the sky. At this moment, a burst of majestic magic burst out from Jalal, who had turned into a meteor. Ding, 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 ding. Under Noah's gaze, a golden magic array suddenly appeared around Jalal, and arranged itself like the Big Dipper. It contained an extremely terrifying attack, and the air was whistling. Accept the punishment of the Big Dipper. While Jalal, who was floating in the air, let out a wild laugh, the 7 magic arrays in the sky that looked like the Big Dipper connected with each other, and the whole array burst out a dazzling light. Feeling that the magic arrays contained extraordinary power, Noah squinted his eyes, and the death feather on his back spewed out a large amount of black light, forming a pushing force that made Noah's body disappear in an instant. 7-star sword. Just as Noah's body disappeared, the light in the magic arrays in the sky exploded. Several resplendent rays of light descended from the sky, landing heavily on the hard rocky ground. Boom! Immediately, the ground that was struck by the resplendent light directly exploded with a deafening boom, stirring up a dense cloud of dust and shockwaves that blew in all directions. Oh! This level of attack can't catch up with your current speed? But my celestial magic is not only at this level. Jalal, who was floating in the sky, laughed loudly, and made a hand gesture. The magic arrays that looked like the Big Dipper flashed again. 7-star sword rain. The moment his words fell, the magic arrays in the sky immediately burst into a strong light, and the strong light turned into rays of light, like raindrops, and burst out from those magic arrays, bringing along a burst of sharp sonic booms, like a curtain of rain, shrouding the ground. Noah's eyes flickered as he looked at the rain of light enveloping him like a curtain of rain. The terrifying power contained in those rays of light, if hit directly, 1 or 2 would be fine, but if there were more, even with Noah's current strength, he would be injured. Undoubtedly, this Jalal's comprehensive strength was not above Noah's, and was even a bit weaker, but he was able to contend with Noah by relying on his meteor, which could display an extremely terrifying speed. Now, because Noah released the power of the magician, the threat brought by the meteor was neutralized by Noah. If this continued, Jalal would undoubtedly be defeated. However, under such circumstances, Jalal used the 7-star sword rain magic, and each of those attacks was roughly equivalent to the attack power of a meteorite, which was really extraordinary. His speed was broken, and Jalal used a powerful magic to make up for his lack of strength, so Noah couldn't do anything to him for a while. Celestial magic was indeed a very powerful magic. If he couldn't find a chance to kill in one blow, then Noah would really have to waste time with this Jalal. Propelled by the death feather, Noah's figure rapidly retreated, leaving behind a series of afterimages in the air above the rocky ground. Pa 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 pa. However, as soon as the afterimages appeared, they would be enveloped by the 7-star sword rain that fell from the sky in the next moment, and directly exploded. Peng 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 peng. Under the attack of those meteorite-like attacks, the ground shook as if the sky was falling, and in the midst of the muffled explosions, one after another craters were blasted open, stirring up a lot of thick smoke and dust. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Even under such circumstances, the resplendent curtain of rain continued to envelop them. Ha 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 ha. Jalal's wild laughter kept echoing in the air. Therefore, Jalal, who was laughing wildly, didn't notice that while Noah was rapidly dodging, the magic in his body was also crazily gathering, causing one of Noah's arms to flash with a brilliant light. Since Jalal had endless tricks up his sleeve, then what Noah needed to do was to strike a killing blow that Jalal couldn't resist no matter what he did, and break the stalemate that Jalal had dragged into a war of attrition. It was for this purpose that Noah chose to dodge and save up his strength. Jalal gave up on using meteor to deal with Noah, and instead gave Noah time to use a powerful magic. So, while dodging the attack of the 7-star sword rain, Noah slowly stretched out his hand. On that arm, a burst of magic power surged, and a gorgeous light burst out. Inside, a delicate pattern gradually emerged. At the same time, Noah softly chanted, "Gather. Guide the fairies' river of light." Suddenly, the sky was like a calm lake that had a big stone thrown into it, stirring up ripples that constantly spread out. Illuminate. For the sake of destroying the evil minions. Violent magic rose from Noah's body. Finally, Jalal, who had realized that something was wrong, suddenly changed his expression. Chapter 405. Hum. It was as if the entire sky was shaking. Space rippled, and the energy between the heavens and the earth became violent. Under the gaze of Jalal, whose expression changed abruptly, the sky that seemed to be trembling darkened for an instant. Shortly after, bursts of starlight suddenly appeared out of thin air. Under the influence of the violent magic energy that rose from Noah's body, the starlight spiraled and gathered together under the influence of the violent magic energy that rose from Noah's body. Not long after, under the convergence of starlight and magic power, a huge, gorgeous halo appeared above Jalal's head. It was like a door to the starry sky, converging in the sky. From the huge halo, Jalal felt a terrifying power that made his heart explode with a sense of crisis. His expression suddenly became full of horror. At this moment, Jalal finally understood. It seemed that he had been a little too confident from the beginning to the end. The person who was fighting with him was definitely not a rabbit that Jalal could casually capture as a sacrifice. He was a lion that could bite back at him at any time. Before Noah came to the Paradise Tower, Jalal had always thought that Noah was relying on the golden wolf Bio, who was an external force, based on the information he got from Zeke. Even if Noah showed extraordinary strength after coming here, Jalal didn't think that he would lose to Noah. After all, even Noah had to admit that the powerful, celestial magic made Jalal almost have no weaknesses. Whether in terms of strength or speed, he was not a match for any of the 10 great Saint Magus masters. But now, when this horrifying, gorgeous halo appeared, Jalal had to admit it no matter how much he didn't dare to believe it. If he wasn't careful, he might be defeated by this person. I'll admit it. You do have great power. Lowering his head, Jalal glared at Noah, who had his arms raised high, his entire body bursting with radiance like a river that soared into the sky, and yelled loudly. But you, who don't understand the greatness of Jalal and the true freedom, can't win against me. While yelling, Jalal raised his hands up high and crossed his arms in the shape of an X. Hum. All of a sudden, streams of black gas emerged from all directions around Jalal. Like flowing black water, they slowly converged above Jalal's crossed arms and condensed. As the black gas flowed in from all directions, a dark sphere slowly appeared above Jalal's crossed arms, and with the addition of the surrounding black gas, it became bigger and bigger little by little. Inside the pitch-black sphere, a terrifying energy was spreading, and it was quickly becoming denser. Seeing this scene, apart from Jalal's character, Noah did have some admiration for Jalal. Even if his overall strength was weaker than Noah's by a few notches, Jalal's means were still very superb. If it was someone else, even if their strength was higher than Jalal's, if they didn't have the means to deal with Jalal's celestial magic that combined strength, speed, destructive power, and killing skills into one, then they would definitely lose. Unfortunately, Jalal's opponent was none other than Noah. Just as you never understand why others can't understand you, others will never understand why you are bound by the so-called freedom and paradise you speak of. So, I'll return this sentence to you, Jalal. Bathed in the river of light, Noah's voice reverberated. You can't win against me. It's time to end this. Hearing this, Jalal revealed a hideous smile. Then let's see who will have the last laugh. As soon as Jalal's voice fell, the dark sphere above his crossed arms seemed to have come to life. Like a heart, it began to beat, and the dark light on the whole sphere suddenly became brighter. The rich black light wriggled and jumped along with the dark sphere. After a while, the dark sphere suspended above Jalal's crossed arms had condensed to the size of a person. An eerie mist continuously rose from the pitch-black sphere. It was clearly formed from magic power, but the pitch-black sphere looked even more real than it actually was. As if trying to suppress the filthy black light rising from the dark sphere, the magic rising from Noah's body turned into a river of light and poured into the huge brilliant halo in the sky, causing the brilliant halo to tremble and burst into a dazzling brilliance. Immediately, the dazzling halo suddenly fell and turned into a stream of light at an extremely terrifying speed. It broke through the air and fell around Jalal in an instant, surrounding him in the middle. Dark paradise. Jalal's expression changed, and he also made a move. He crossed his arms and swung them down forcefully, and the solid black sphere suddenly fell down, wrapping Jalal in it. At the same time, Noah extended his arm, which was glittering with dazzling radiance and intricate patterns, toward Jalal and clenched his hand down heavily. Fairy glitter. Suddenly, the huge halo shrank fiercely, and wherever it passed, the space shook violently. Accompanied by the shrinkage of the halo, the space expanded above the sky like a storm. It was like the condensation of a star before it exploded. The huge halo shrunk at an extremely fast speed, and with a boundless momentum, it viciously slammed into the pitch-black sphere. Between heaven and earth, everything was quiet. Boom! In the next second, a terrible loud noise suddenly sounded, bringing with it a huge sound wave. It was as if the sound wave was real, and it crazily spread out from the horizon, stirring up the dark clouds in the sky. In an encircling manner, the concentrated halo that fell on the dark sphere suddenly exploded at that moment. Like a huge wave in the sea, it exploded with a loud bang, bringing with it a dense fire that was enough to form a sea of fire and a terrible impact wave that rushed in all directions. The fire waves that blotted out the sky seemed to have covered the entire sky at this moment. The thick layer of dark clouds was completely evaporated at this moment. Those that were further away were like mice that had encountered a cat, suddenly dissipating under the attack of the frightening shockwave. Crack. After a while, with a cracking sound, the edge of this world directly cracked open. The moment the crack appeared, the entire world was swept away by the shockwaves and waves of fire. Ripples spread out as the cracks rapidly spread apart. Crack, 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 crack. Amidst a series of crisp and resounding cracking sounds that made one's teeth ache, the entire world began to crack and spread rapidly. Bang! Like a mountain rock exploding, an astonishing loud noise suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. That was the sound of the world directly exploding. This battlefield constructed by ancient magic had finally completed its mission. In the most violent way, under the impact and fire that swept across the world, it disappeared, allowing the vast room on the top floor of the Paradise Tower to once again appear in the surroundings. Rumble, and under the impact and fire that hadn't had time to completely dissipate, the entire Paradise Tower trembled violently like an earthquake. Pah! The huge crystal in the center of the vast room shattered very straightforwardly, turning into fragments that covered the sky and earth. With amazing speed, the fragments violently shot in all directions. Each fragment contained a great force, shooting to the surroundings like bullets. However, most of these fragments shuttled into the attacking wind and fire waves, and were instantly vaporized into nothingness by the high temperature. Not even a light smoke was produced, and they were forcefully scattered by the ferocious air waves. Noah, who was standing on the ground, stared intently at the center of the attacking wind and fire wave with his pitch-black eyes. Some crystal fragments mixed with sharp wind flew past him with a swoosh-swoosh sound, but they were unable to distract him in the slightest. After a while, the impact wind and fire that permeated the entire space finally dissipated. Among them, a charred figure stagnated in mid-air for a while, then fell and smashed heavily on the ground of the room. The force brought by the acceleration of gravity even caused cracks to appear on the ground. The outcome was clear. Chapter 406. When Noah, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Milyana parted ways and headed to the top floor of the Paradise Tower to look for Jalal. They were actually attacked by the soldiers in the entire Paradise Tower. That was to be expected. Jalal had installed magic crystals in the entire Paradise Tower for surveillance. Although he couldn't say that he could clearly see every move of everyone in the Paradise Tower, he could at least know where they were. Jalal judged that with his current strength, he would not be able to deal with Noah's golden wolf, Bio, who was able to kill Joseph. Before summoning his thought clone, Jalal had yet to summon back his thought clone. Therefore, in order to buy time to construct a battlefield and restrict Noah's golden wolf Bio's ancient magic, Jalal had to restrain Noah. After all, to be able to construct another space and set rules that were beneficial to oneself in advance, ancient magic wasn't something that could be used at will. It required a lot of time to prepare and carve a magic array that could construct a battlefield. Therefore, Jalal got the soldiers in the Paradise Tower to arrest Noah. Naturally, there was no way to really arrest Noah in that way. However, Jalal's goal was only to buy time, so as long as he could buy time, it would be enough. In order to repel all the attacking soldiers and find Jalal, Noah was delayed quite a bit, allowing Jalal to successfully complete the carving of the ancient magic array. And while Noah was dealing with the attacking soldiers in the Paradise Tower, Zio, Wooly, and Milyana, led by Simon, arrived at Fairy Tale. At this time, the construction of the fairy tale was nearing completion with the help of various magic tools and the magic that the guild members were able to provide. Outside the fairy tale, Simon and the other three looked at the signboard that was hung high above the main door, and their hearts were more or less filled with emotions. Is this a proper guild? Wooly's eyes, which were like ornaments on his square face, widened. What a luxurious guild. Because of the expansion, Fairy Tale now looked like a huge castle. Looking at the huge castle in front of him, it was natural that Wooly, who had been living in the Tower of Paradise for the past 8 years, would be so excited. Zio was also excited. However, she was excited about something else. Sister. Zio had a complicated expression. Is sister inside? Hey, are we really going to go in and find little Elu? Milyana asked Simon timidly. It's all little Elu's companions inside. Hearing this, the four of them once again had complicated expressions. Companions. In the past, weren't they also Alusha's companions? Let's go in. Simon took a deep breath. We also have to make some closure for our past. Zio, Wooly, and Milyana exchanged looks, mustered their courage, and nodded. Pushed the door that looked like a city's gate, and the four of them walked into the Paradise Tower. First, the four of them saw a place that looked like a commercial street. After passing through the place that looked like a commercial street, the four of them came to the interior of the guild with the door wide open. They went straight inside and came to the guild hall that looked more like an auditorium than a bar. There were tables and chairs lined up. Rebby, who was sitting on a chair and chatting with Lucy, noticed Simon and the others and asked in confusion. Who are those people? They're not from the guild, right? Huh? Lucy just noticed and made a sound of surprise. It's true. What's the matter? Naz, who suddenly stood on the table, said with some excitement. Are they here to mess things up? They don't look like it. Gray also looked over, and his hands began to unconsciously pull at his clothes. However, they do have a feeling of magic on them. They should be sorcerers. Be careful. Alusha. Hubby flew to Alusha, who was engrossed in eating cake, and pointed in the direction of the door with some mischievous intentions. Someone is here to mess things up. Mess things up? Alusha turned her head in confusion. When she saw Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Milyana looking around in the direction of the door, her eyes trembled and her pretty face changed drastically. She was stunned. Welcome to Fairy Tale. Just as the people in the guild were whispering and Alusha was stunned, the signboard girls, Mira and Lisanna, came in front of the four of them. Excuse me, is there anything I can help you with? Mira greeted the four of them with a gentle smile. Do you have any requests for us? If that's the case, you can discuss it with us. Lisanna also greeted them with a polite smile. The president is not here now. If you want to ask fairy tale sorcerers for help, you can discuss it with us directly. We are not here to make a request. Simon stepped forward and spoke on behalf of the four of them. We are here to look for someone. Look for someone? Lisanna was stunned. Sister. Zio couldn't help but stand up. It's Alusha. Is she here? Are you here to look for Alusha? Mira was a little surprised and looked in the direction of Alusha. Following Myra's gaze, Simon and the others also turned their gazes and saw Alusha standing there in a daze. Although it had been 8 years, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana all recognized each other at once, just like Alusha. Alusha. Simon, who had always been very calm, showed a rare trace of excitement. Alusha. Wooly didn't know whether to breathe a sigh of relief or a sigh. Little Elu. Miljana called out. Sister. Zio was the only one who stood there in a daze, not knowing how to react. What's wrong? Gray frowned and looked at Alusha. Do you know each other? Zio. Simon. Wooly. Miljana. Alusha didn't answer Gray's question. Instead, her face was filled with a complicated expression, and even a trace of fear appeared in her eyes. You. Why are you? Simon suppressed the excitement in his heart and regained his composure. He said to Alusha in a deep voice, let's talk about reunion later. Alusha, we're here to tell you that your companion has broken into the Tower of Paradise and is planning to fight Jalal head-on. What? What did you say? Alusa finally stood up in shock and shouted anxiously, ignoring the fact that Simon's group of 4 had come here and making a living out of her various emotions. My companion? Who is it? We don't know his name either. Simon shook his head. All these years, I've been collecting all kinds of information about Fairy Tale, but there's no mention of him. We only know that there's a pure white emblem on the back of his right hand. That's the emblem of your guild. The emblem is on the back of his right hand? Or is it pure white? Lisanna interjected. Could it be Big Brother Noah? Noah? Alusha was completely confused. Why would Noah know about the Tower of Paradise? Why would Noah go to the Tower of Paradise? Why would Noah have a conflict with Jalal? Although I don't know why he broke into the Tower of Paradise, he went looking for Jalal because of you, little Elu, Miriana said to Alusha. We told him about what happened in the past and how you betrayed us and escaped from the tower alone. But he didn't believe us, so he went looking for Jalal. Sister. Zio finally stood up and shouted with a face full of excitement. You really didn't betray us? Zio. Alusha lowered her head in pain. I think it's better to talk about it later. Wooly nodded. If we don't go to the Tower of Paradise now, that Noah guy might be killed by Jalal. Alusha raised her head abruptly, her original timidity and hesitation all gone, replaced by her usual sternness. I will never allow such a thing to happen. Chapter 407. The dazzling magic power that rose like a river of light gradually began to dim, and Noah's figure was once again exposed to the air. Phew. Noah let out a long sigh to ease the fatigue that arose from using a large amount of magic power to cast the super spell. He raised his eyes and looked forward. On the ground that was scattered with crystal shards, Jalal, who was charred black and smoking, lay there as if he was dead. The evil aura on his body had become so weak that even Noah could only detect a trace of it. Noah, who had remained silent, slowly lifted his feet and walked forward. It didn't take long for him to arrive in front of Jalal. He looked down at Jalal, who seemed to be dead. Every corner of Jalal's body was charred black, as if he had just been thrown into a fire to be burned. There was no pity in Noah's eyes. There was no hatred or resentment. There was only the usual calmness in his eyes. This man who ended up in such a miserable state was indeed amazing. He was able to drag Noah, who was several times stronger than him, into a battle of attrition. He was only defeated now. However, no matter how amazing he was, the result represented everything. At this moment, Jalal was neither a noble member of the council nor a domineering ruler of the Paradise Tower. He was just a loser. That was all. Ha. Ha ha ha. Perhaps he had sensed that Noah had come to his side. Jalal continued to laugh, but there was an unconcealable weakness and confusion in his voice. Fairy Glitter and Fairy Tale are two of the 3 super spells. It is a legendary super obliteration spell that can gather the light of the sun, moon, and stars and condense it into a merciless light that will never allow the enemy to survive. It is a super spell that can destroy all enemies. In the past 8 years, I have never slacked off on collecting information about the outside world. I also know that there are 3 super spells in the famous fairy tale, but the guild leader only has one of them. The other 2 super spells were completely buried with the death of the first guild leader. Jalal revealed a sadistic smile. If I remember correctly, Makarov's super spell should be Fairy Law. It is a legendary super trial spell that uses holy light to crusade against darkness. It targets everything that the caster considers to be his enemy and destroys them mentally. I thought you would use this super spell, but I didn't expect you to use Fairy Glitter. It seems that the 3 super spells of Fairy Tale are about to reappear in the world. Hearing this, Noah didn't refute or agree. He only said this sentence in an indifferent tone. Your celestial spell is very powerful. Is it? Jalal laughed sarcastically. You are indeed a member of Fairy Tale. Facing the enemy who wanted to take your life and use you as a sacrifice, you can still say such comforting words after the enemy has been defeated. You are really gentle, just like Alusha, but aren't you a bit too naive? If you want me to spit at my defeated opponent, then I'm sorry, I don't have that kind of hobby. I'm just telling you the truth or comforting you. You know very well in your heart. Noah's tone did not carry any emotion. There was only a sense of authenticity, as if he was telling the truth. Whether I am naive or not, it is all up to you. So, what are you going to do next? Even though his voice revealed a hint of weakness that was difficult to hide, Jalal still seemed to be unwilling to show weakness in front of Noah, and laughed arrogantly. You want to take my life? Just because you deceived Alusha, used Alusha, and planned to take Alusha's life, I should take your life. Saying such a sentence, Noah looked forward, and a trace of coldness appeared in his eyes little by little. It's just that when I attack you, those sneaky rats won't mind taking the opportunity to ambush you, am I right? Hearing Noah's words, Jalal was stunned for a moment, but then he seemed to have realized something, and his face darkened. At the same time, in the place where Noah's gaze landed, a somewhat charming laughter echoed. As expected of the man who defeated both Jalal and Joseph. I didn't expect you to notice my presence. I only just arrived. Saying such a sentence, in the shadow ahead, an enchanting figure accompanied by a magic circle appeared out of thin air. Under the rhythm of the magic circle from top to bottom, she gradually appeared before Noah's eyes. As expected, Sir Zeke's sudden disappearance was due to an unexpected situation at the Paradise Tower. I came to take a look out of curiosity, but I didn't expect to see someone who shouldn't be here. The enchanting figure, Urudia, held a crystal ball and bowed to Noah. Nice to meet you, Sir Noah. Let's put it this way for now. Urudia, Jalal said in astonishment. Why are you here? Of course, I am here to witness the outcome of the unexpected situation. Urudia revealed a cute smile at Jalal, but that smile was just like a poisonous spider's. In the end, Sir Jalal, you are indeed at the end of your road. But it doesn't matter, I have had a lot of fun in the past 8 years. Thank you very much for your company. Fun? Jalal's heart trembled. So that's how it is, Noah suddenly said. I have always been curious as to why Jalal, who was locked up in the torture chamber 8 years ago, would change so much. At first, I thought it was because he accidentally awakened magic and lost himself because his body and mind couldn't keep up with the power of magic. But now, it seems that everything is your doing. What did you say? Jalal showed a shaken expression, but what he got in return was Urudia's charming laughter. Actually, there is nothing to hide. What Urudia said next was a severe blow to Jalal's evil body and mind. I pretended to be Gerald's undead and brainwashed Jalal, instilling the obsession of resurrecting Gerald into his heart. For the past 8 years, he has been. At this moment, Jalal felt as though his entire head had exploded, and everything went blank. However, neither Noah nor Urudia paid attention to Jalal, who was at the end of his road. Noah stared at Urudia and suddenly laughed. In other words, in the end, the one who caused Alusha so much pain was you? Urudia grinned. It's quite interesting, isn't it? When these words came out of Urusha's mouth, a strong sense of crisis rose in her heart, causing her expression to stiffen. The look in her eyes changed drastically, and she took a step back without hesitation. Clang! At this moment, a dazzling sword light accompanied by a crisp sword cry suddenly appeared and slashed toward Urusha. Rip! Because she took a step back in time, the brilliant sword light flashed past her original position. It couldn't cut Urudia's body, but the front of Urudia's clothes were cut open. Feeling as though an ice-cold dagger had brushed past her body, Urudia's heart clenched fiercely. She couldn't care less about covering her exposed skin and raised the crystal ball in her hand. Future flash. The crystal ball lying quietly in Urusha's hands suddenly trembled. It suddenly split into dozens of crystal balls. Like cannonballs, the crystal balls flew against the atmosphere. Amidst the piercing sound of air breaking, the crystal balls ruthlessly shot in front of Urusha. Buzz! However, at the same time, an intricate magic array rotated in front of the crystal balls, suddenly releasing a burst of strong light. An extremely dazzling beam of light burst out from it, enveloping the dozens of crystal balls that were flying over. Bang! All the crystal balls exploded under the attack of the laser beam. Then, the beam of light rushed toward Urudia without slowing down. Urudia's expression changed greatly. In the next moment, Urudia's figure was completely engulfed by the beam of light. Boom! A loud sound resounded through the Paradise Tower. Chapter 408. Boom! Amidst an astonishing loud noise, a bright beam of light blasted through the wall of the Paradise Tower and shot out from the inside. It was exposed to the sunlight and swept into the sky without slowing down, disappearing into the sky. Whoosh! In the spacious room on the top floor of the Paradise Tower, thick smoke, fire, and strong wind were fluctuating in all directions like a typhoon. In the sharp sound of the wind, it blew to every corner. Bang! Jalal, who had collapsed on the ground, was unsurprisingly blown away and hit hard against a wall. Coo! Jalal, who had used up all of his mana and was unable to move due to the wounds all over his body, could only endure the excruciating pain of crashing into the wall. He let out a pained groan before softly sliding down to the ground. However, the pain from his body couldn't erase the impact on Jalal's heart at all. Under such circumstances, Jalal struggled to raise his head and looked at Noah, who was levitating in the air with the help of Feather of Death. There was a magic circle full of phosphorescent light rotating in front of Noah. Noah was holding a black knight's sword in his hand, and Jalal couldn't help but laugh bitterly. That sword, I've never seen it before. At this moment, Jalal finally understood. In the previous battle, Noah was still holding back and not using any of his techniques. Jalal sensed an extraordinary aura from the Dark Knight's sword, which was engraved with mysterious runes on its body. Obviously, that sword was as extraordinary as it looked. In the previous battle, if Noah had used this sword, Jalal would have been defeated even faster. In addition, there was the Golden Wolf, which was so powerful that it could easily kill one of the top 10 Saint Master Magi, and the 3 great magic spells, Fairy Tale, which was famous in the magic world. Noah Doria. Just how strong was this man? Noah didn't know about the shock and bitterness in Jalal's heart. At this time, Noah, who was holding the knight's sword and floating in the air under the support of the magician in the form of Death Feather, said calmly with a magic circle rotating in front of him. His eyes were like arrows as he looked at the thick smoke in front of him. Come out. As soon as the voice faded, the smoke and dust in front of Noah became slightly chaotic. A figure with tattered clothes fell out of the smoke. His originally fair skin had many black marks, and even his face was covered in dust. He was in a sorry state. He actually made a move. Urrutia, who was in an extremely sorry state, looked extremely ugly at this moment. She looked at Noah, who was floating in the air not far away, and her eyes flashed with anger and fear. She was different from Jalal, who could get the title of one of the top 10 Saint Master Magi with just a clone of the body of longing. Although Urrutia's strength was not bad, it was only about the same as Zeke-in. There was still a big gap between her and Jalal, who had recovered his full strength and was very powerful even among the top 10 Saint Masters. Urrutia's uniqueness lay in the fact that her magic was more special than Jalal's. Therefore, although Urrutia's figure was in a sorry state, she was not injured by the previous bombardment. Therefore, Urrutia knew that compared to Noah, who could defeat Jalal, she was definitely not his match. However, Urrutia thought that Noah must have consumed a lot of his magic power in the battle with Jalal. Even if he was powerful, he should be in a weakened state now, which was why she showed herself. However, Urrutia didn't expect that not only was Noah not weak at all, but he also made a move without hesitation, almost killing her instantly. When did such a terrifying person appear in a fairy tale? Not only did he tame such a golden wolf, but he also has such strength. Urrutia's eyes flickered. It seems that I have to go back and report this to the higher-ups. What? Want to escape? Noah, who saw Urrutia's intention to retreat, tightened his grip on the knight's sword and sneered. Do you think that if I don't help Alusha get revenge, I'll let you escape? After saying that, Noah's expression suddenly froze on his face. He turned his head abruptly and looked in another direction. At the entrance of this vast room, several figures rushed over. Amidst the chaotic sound of footsteps, they appeared in front of everyone's eyes. There were about 10 or so people who had come. Among them, there were people that Noah was very familiar with, and there were also people that Jalal was very familiar with. Even Urrutia was very familiar with some of them. They were Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Milyana, as well as Naz, Gray, Lucy, and Hubby, who had gone to Fairy Tale to seek help. As for the person in the lead, it was naturally Alusha. Noah. Seeing that Noah, who was floating in the air, was safe and sound, Alusha secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she saw Jalal, who had fallen to the side, Alusha's eyes became serious. Jalal? Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Milyana also saw the unscathed Noah and the charred Jalal. They instantly cried out in surprise. Could it be that Jalal was defeated by Noah? What? What? Lucy had a blank look on her face. What's the situation now? Is the fight over? Naz clenched his fists and looked like a violent person. He shouted loudly at Urrutia, the only one who was still standing apart from Noah. Are you the enemy? Who are you? Unlike Naz, when Grace saw Urrutia's full appearance, especially her face that was covered in dust, he felt that it was a little familiar. This made him anxious. You. Instead, Alusha, who had been to the council, recognized Urrutia and said in surprise. Are you Urrutia? You are you? This name seemed to have an extraordinary meaning to Gray. Gray was stunned. Good chance. Seeing that everyone's attention was suddenly taken away by the sudden intruder, Urrutia, who was holding her clothes with one hand and hiding her beautiful figure under the tattered cloth, suddenly raised the crystal ball in her hand again. Arc of time. A strong light suddenly rose from the crystal ball in Urrutia's hand. Rumble. Just like that, the entire Paradise Pagoda suddenly trembled. Moreover, with an extremely shocking speed, as if it was about to collapse, the tremors abruptly shook. Kacha kacha kacha. The ground broke apart inch by inch. Boom. The ceiling was directly shattered. Pa. Even the walls seemed to have been weathered and turned into dust and began to dissipate. Woo 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 woo. Naz, Gray, Lucy, Hubby, Zio, Simon, Wooly, and Miljana didn't even have time to react to what had happened. The ground suddenly collapsed, causing them to lose their balance and sway along with the fragments of the collapsed ground. Boom! Noah swung his sword and shattered a huge piece of the ceiling that had fallen above him. Then, he turned his head and looked at Arudia. Unfortunately, there was only a pile of rocks left. What's going on? Damn it. The ground has cracked. Ugh, so disgusting, no way. Naz. You even get dizzy from sitting on stones? Without giving Noah time to be annoyed, the exclamations of Naz and the others entered Noah's ears. Noah reacted, turned around, and flew toward Naz and the others. Noah. Elisha, who was also sitting on a piece of cracked ground, first shouted in Noah's direction. Then, she remembered something and quickly turned her gaze to Jalal's direction. The tower that took 8 years to build has collapsed just like that? Jalal, who was lying on the ground, looked up with his unfocused eyes. He watched as the top of the tower cracked and shattered bit by bit and laughed self-deprecatingly. Fine. Let this pointless tower that I spent 8 years building become my grave. Ha 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 ha. Amidst the wild laughter, Elisha watched as Jalal was buried by the falling stones and didn't speak for a long time. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.